saw a canine unit with the city of Eagan. This all just happening as we came live on air. So they're all going to that scene down there, which is where earlier there was that cowboy hat that was located. It has not been confirmed that that was the cowboy hat that the suspect Vance Boelter was wearing. However, if you look at that cowboy hat in the picture and you look at the picture that was taken yesterday, they do look remarkably similar. There also was a vehicle that was confirmed to be a vehicle that the suspect was driving. And there's throughout this whole day, there's been a massive police presence. We've been on scene here along Highway 25 between Green Isle and Val Plain since 8:45. But what we just saw right there, what was just captured live, by far the largest grouping of police that we've seen at one time. And we have not seen any of those SWAT vehicles yet. Neither had we seen any of those canine vehicles, multiple canine vehicles coming in as well. So certainly developing rapidly down at the scene, where there's also a property located down there near where that vehicle is and where that cowboy hat is. Police clearly are searching the area, and things are developing there. We do want to talk about this alert that was issued. They issued an alert at 10:25 that came to everyone's phone. That was telling people to keep their doors locked and their vehicles secured. And it was saying that law enforcement will be going to area residences to ask to search the property. Again, that was about an hour and a half ago now. And we've seen law enforcement, more and more law enforcement coming. But what we just saw there, Raya, was nothing like we have seen since we have been here since about 8:45.
All right, Joe, thank you. And it looks like the signal may not be the best out there, and that is why the picture quality wasn't also the best for a moment. But we do appreciate your report. We do want to take a look at the map and show you who are watching at home exactly where this is taking place. So this is Sibley County, right off of Highway 25, in between Belle Plaine and Green Isle. And Green Isle is that small farming community where authorities say that the suspect in this case, 57-year-old Vance Boelter, was actually living with his family, kids, as well as his wife. And that in between Belle Plaine and Green Isle is where that police presence, that huge presence that we just saw Joe describing to us, is taking place. This is southwest of the metro, about an hour or so away in Sibley County. Now, this all started, of course, at about 2 o'clock Saturday morning, when authorities say that Boelter drove to the home of State Senator John Hoffman and his wife. That was in Champlin, and he proceeded, authorities say, of shooting the state senator as well as his wife multiple times, and then proceeded to allegedly drive to Representative Melissa Hortman's home, shot her and her husband as well. And of course, these are developing updates as we get them in live. We're going to be continuing to perhaps as well bring those updates to you live. And I know the U.S. Open is on. I know that golf is on at the moment, but we do also want to let you know that we will be live on the KARE 11 Plus stream. So for the most up-to-date information, you can find us there. But for now, we do want to return to your regular broadcast.
We now return you to our regularly scheduled program in progress.
Good morning, everybody, and thanks so much for joining us here on the KARE 11 Plus stream. We do want to give you the latest updates as we know them right now. In Sibley County, there is a huge law enforcement presence as this massive manhunt for 57-year-old Vance Boelter carries on. He's the man suspected of shooting 2 Minnesota lawmakers as well as their spouses. So we do want to check in with our reporter who is currently on the scene, on the ground there in Sibley County. Joe McCoy has been there for several hours now. We also know within the last hour, an emergency alert actually went out to people who are living in Sibley County, telling them to make sure they secure their homes as well as their vehicles. They also say that is where authorities have found the suspect's vehicle, as well as a hat that remarkably resembles that hat that Boelter was last seen wearing in a photo. So, Joe, we do want to check in with you now. Just describe to us what is going on out there where you are.
Raya, just moments ago, an incredibly large law enforcement presence just arrived on scene. I want to have our photographer, you can kind of see all the lights down there, but multiple SWAT units just arrived on scene, multiple K-9 units just arrived on scene. There had to be at least 10, I would say, law enforcement vehicles that came rushing down this road here on Highway 25 that is in between Belle Plaine and Green Isle here in Sibley County. Things seemingly developing very rapidly. We have been on scene here since about 8:45 this morning. There's been a large police presence here because of that hat that you mentioned, Raya, that cowboy hat, and because of that vehicle. But nothing like we have just saw a moment ago with the amount of law enforcement that just arrived on scene. There is a property back there. You can't see it. It's behind the trees. There has been a very large law enforcement presence around that property the entire day. We of course do not know at this time if Vance Boelter is there or where he is at right now, but you would believe that police have found something that has brought them to that property, and why we have seen such an incredibly large law enforcement presence just arrive here, including, as I mentioned, those SWAT units, as well as those K-9 units. We've also saw the Burnsville Mobile Command Center. We saw the Bloomington Bomb Squad arrive on scene. So that is what is developing right now as they continue to search for that suspect, 57-year-old Vance Boelter.
Joe, I do want to ask you, this is a small rural community, as you have described it. I know you were also in Green Isle yesterday talking with perhaps community members and neighbors out there who may have known Boelter in some way or another. At least you were looking for those answers. We know that authorities have said that Boelter does or did live in Green Isle with his family, several kids, as well as his wife. So describe to us what Green Isle is like and what sort of conversations you were having with community members out there, not just yesterday, but today as well.
Yeah, right. Green Isle, it's a very rural community. The population sign, when on the city sign when you drive in, is less than 600. So that kind of gives you an idea of how rural it is out here in Green Isle. And the suspect's property, Boelter's property, is even more rural. You have to go down a few dirt roads to get to his property. As you mentioned, I've been talking with community members and neighbors throughout the day yesterday and as well today. I personally have not been able to find anyone that has met Vance Boelter or knows about him. I went to a gas station yesterday. I talked to the woman at the counter. She says she has worked there many years. She had never seen Vance Boelter. She saw the picture on the news, didn't recognize his face, didn't recognize his name. And then actually today, we drove back to Vance Boelter's property here in Green Isle because we were able to get much closer to it today. There wasn't that large perimeter that was set up yesterday. And we talked to the closest neighbors to that home. They said they didn't really know much about the guy. They maybe have seen him once or twice, but they didn't really know anything about him. So we have not been able to find anyone so far in Green Isle that knows Vance Boelter or his family or was able to kind of tell us what he is like. So very rural community out here in Green Isle. As I mentioned, less than 600 people, but now law enforcement from multiple agencies have descended upon this rural community in this search, Raya.
And that law enforcement presence has grown exponentially since you were first there, Joe. Maybe just explain to us how things have developed over the last couple of hours.
Absolutely. So when we arrived on scene here around 8:45, State Patrol was here. Also, the Sibley County Sheriff was here. So there was certainly a considerable police presence, of course, because of that cowboy hat that you mentioned, looked remarkably similar to the one that he was wearing in that security camera picture that was captured and was released. And also because of that vehicle that at the time State Patrol was saying was a vehicle of interest. We then had it confirmed in that emergency alert that Boelter's car was found here, that black car that we saw. So it was a large police presence, but nothing crazy, nothing that felt like it was really escalating. Then we saw the Burnsville Command Center arrive. We saw the Bloomington Bomb Squad arrive. I would say that was all around 45 minutes to an hour ago. But again, they weren't driving really quickly, Raya, to arrive on scene. It wasn't like they were flashing their lights and speeding down the highway here on Highway 25. But what we just saw with all of that law enforcement arrive, with those SWAT teams arrive, with those K-9 units arrive, they were speeding down Highway 25 to get to the scene. So certainly, I think we can infer that the scene down there is certainly escalating. We do not know why it is escalating. We have no idea if Vance Boelter is down there, and that is why there's this large presence. We just know that things have certainly been picking up here.
All right, Joe, thank you very much for that update. We do want you to take a look at the map on your screen. That is the area in which Joe is right now. So in between Belle Plaine and Green Isle off of Highway 25, this is southwest of the metro in the Twin Cities. And that is where things are developing at the moment.
Okay.
So as Joe has described, of course, there was a big police presence still there right now. It all started with what now authorities say they had found, which is the suspect's vehicle. They also say they had found that cowboy hat. We also want to mention what we know about Vance Boelter's wife right now. Just in the last few hours, we confirmed through the Mille Lacs County Sheriff that a car was pulled over in Onamia, and Boelter's wife was in that car along with other relatives, but not Vance Boelter himself. The sheriff says there were people who were detained who were in that car, but it's not clear at the moment if the wife was among them. Now, this is all coming out as we do await word on when exactly we'll get an update today from authorities and state leaders. Audrey Russo is live at the Emergency Operations Center in Blaine. She joins us live now with what we know so far. Audrey?
Yeah, Raya, we just checked in with other folks here at the Emergency Operations Center. They tell us they, again, do not have a planned update. They did just a few minutes ago tell us that they want to try to bring a media liaison in here, somebody who can stay in the room with us as more and more cameras are showing up throughout the morning. We've been here since 7. They want to bring a media liaison in here, somebody who can help a more seamless line of communication, just so that we can all be ready. Because of course, everybody who's here wants to be ready when an official approaches that podium. So that hasn't happened yet, but again, they're hoping to get us a media liaison who can give us some quicker, more up-to-the-minute updates. Now, 2:30 this afternoon will mark 36 hours since all of this began. Just to refresh you, Senator John Hoffman and his wife were shot early Saturday morning at their home in Champlin. We know that they're recovering at this time. Former House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband were shot at their home in Brooklyn Park again Saturday morning. They were killed in what officials are calling an act of political violence. Now, the suspect, Vance Boelter, reportedly disguised himself as a police officer before escaping on foot from that Brooklyn Park scene. Now, Belter's wife, Raya, as you mentioned, has become a bigger question mark, at least for us, so far in this investigation, really just in the last couple of hours. Where was she headed? We know that Onamia is 100 miles plus north of their home address. What other relatives were in the car? They did not specify what type of relatives. They just said that they were relatives, but we do know that they have children. What else was found in the car when they were detained? And was everybody in that stopped car detained and questioned? Now, we know that she was listed on the Proterian Security website. That is the security company that both her and Vance Boelter were involved with. So a lot of questions here. Another question I know that I have is whether or not that $50,000 reward offered by the FBI helped spur to any pieces of evidence or any tips that have helped police get closer to locating Vance Boelter. Again, these are just some of the questions we have as we await another briefing. Raya?
Audrey, thank you very much. I know you and I were both actually out in Champlin yesterday. I know you were there for a couple of hours. I was there for a significant amount of time just talking to neighbors. Of course, that's the neighborhood in which State Senator John Hoffman resided with his wife. And there was just so much heartbreak and shock within that community. But we appreciate you being on standby this morning for any sort of official briefings that may come our way. And if you're just now tuning in, we do want to recap a little bit of what's happened in the past 36 hours or so and how we sort of ended up at this point. So it all started about 2 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. That's when authorities say the suspect in this case, who is 57-year-old Vance Boelter, arrived at the home of State Senator John Hoffman. And that is when they say that he shot both State Senator John Hoffman as well as his wife multiple times. And then they say that the suspect drove to Representative Melissa Hortman's home. And that's when they say that he shot and killed both her as well as her husband. They also say the suspect was impersonating a police officer. They say that he had lights flashing on his vehicle, also some sort of siren. And inside that vehicle, which authorities have recovered at one of the scenes, they say that they found No Kings flyers. And No Kings refers to those massive protests that were set to take place over the weekend, not just here in the Twin Cities, but also all across the country. And authorities also say that they found a manifesto that mentions several DFL lawmakers. Authorities say officers confronted the suspect at one of the scenes, and after an exchange of gunfire, he then fled on foot. And that has led to a massive manhunt. Searches of his home in both Green Isle, as well as a different home in North Minneapolis where he was renting. Apparently, he stayed there just a couple of days out of the week, but his main residence was in Green Isle, where we also know that he has several children, as well as a wife. We're not exactly sure of the status of his wife this morning, and the search for him, of course, is still ongoing. We do want to take another look at where the search for Boelter appears to be focused right now. So an emergency alert was sent out about an hour and a half ago in Sibley County, and that's near Faxon Township. Now, this is not a shelter in place, but authorities are urging anybody in that area along Highway 25 to be extra careful. Make sure your homes and your vehicles are locked. Also, within the last couple of hours, Senator Amy Klobuchar appeared on NBC's Meet the Press, and she talked about what made former House Speaker Melissa Hortman so special.
We started out together in politics, moms with young kids, and somehow she was able to balance getting to know every door knock, every house in her district, while raising two children, Girl Scout leader. She taught Sunday school, and maybe all that juggling made it easier for her as she worked her way up in the legislature and became this extraordinary Speaker of the House, ushering in everything from free school lunch to working with the governor and other leaders to do some landmark legislation on paid family leave, to this year working with her Republican counterpart when we pretty much had a tied legislature to get the budget done. That's Melissa Hortman, my friend. And when you think about political violence and the statistics of political violence, you've got to realize the people who are behind it and a true public servant that we lost.
Now, Senator Klobuchar also talked about the ongoing manhunt, as well as the latest on the condition of Senator Hoffman and his wife.
He's another extraordinary person, got into politics because his daughter has spina bifida, couldn't get insurance coverage, and went from a school board to the state legislature, also really well respected. And what I know about them is that they are hanging in there. His wife was out of surgery first, and she's actually texted some of our mutual friends, and he may face some additional surgeries, but he is also in stable condition right now, from what I know. So they had multiple gun wounds, and were able to, the first responders were there, the police were there, got them to the hospital, and then had the presence of mind to go over to Leader Hortman's house, and that's where they found this perpetrator, this man who seemed to have no limits in terms of the murderous acts that he committed.
A lot of people across the country praying for the senator and his wife's full recovery. If you're just now joining us, we do want to give you the latest update. Within the last hour, an emergency alert went out to people who are living in Sibley County, near where authorities believe that they found the suspect's vehicle. That's near Highway 25 in Faxon Township. The area is now closed off, and we've seen several metro agencies responding to help in the search there. They're telling people to make sure they are using caution and to make sure their homes and their vehicles are locked. Just to clarify, this is not a shelter in place, but an important reminder to be very careful. We do want to take a look at a map showing us where all of this is happening right now. Near Highway 25, about halfway between Green Isle and Belle Plaine, there's a very large police presence right now. Green Isle is where the 57-year-old suspect reportedly owns a home. We do want to check back in with Joe McCoy, who's live at the scene. Joe, what can you tell us right now? Last time we spoke, you said things just keep on escalating and more law enforcement is swarming that area.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Raya. Just a few minutes ago, we saw a skid loader with the South Metro SWAT unit arrived on scene. There are multiple SWAT units on scene, as well as multiple K9 units. About an hour or so ago, a bomb squad arrived on scene. Things have been ratcheting up very quickly here. I want to just show kind of the growing presence of not only media, but also onlookers here. This is a very rural area here in Green Isle. There's only less than 600 people here who live in Green Isle, according to the city's population sign. So this community right now is totally, you know, I don't want to say confused, but they're trying to figure out what is going on here. This is, of course, not normal for any situation, but especially a very rural area out here in Green Isle. So the police presence has been escalating dramatically within the past 5 or 10 minutes now, as it all is focused down there where you kind of see those trees and those flashing lights. That is where earlier in the day, when we got on scene around 8:45, there was a cowboy hat that it has not been confirmed that that was the cowboy hat that Boelter was wearing, but it does look remarkably similar to the cowboy hat that Vance Boelter was wearing in that photo that was captured on security camera. There also was this black car, and I think we have some video of that car that we can take. This black car that was confirmed to be a car that Boelter was driving at some point. We do not know when that car was left there. We don't know if he left it there last night, this morning. All we know is that when we arrived on scene, that black car was stationed there right next, basically, you know, a few yards away from where that cowboy hat was also stationed. There also is a property right near where that black Buick was that has had a large law enforcement presence around it this entire morning. Of course, we cannot get that close to the scene right now because there is such a large perimeter. So we don't know exactly the details of what is going on back there right now. But it is definitely safe to say that there is this scene here has really elevated in the past 20 minutes or so as more and more law enforcement has arrived on scene. And not only law enforcement, just you know, SWAT teams and bomb units. You know, this is a very large presence here, Raya.
And Joe, you mentioned, of course, there are many journalists there, but as well as maybe a group of onlookers who are gathering. So I'm just curious to know, I mean, what is the atmosphere like? Or is there a sense of fear, or is it more just curiosity, people coming out with questions, trying to figure out what it is that's happening?
Yeah, I think it's more curiosity, right? We've had a lot of people drive by us and ask us, hey, what's going on down there? Can you tell us what you know? So I think it's just a lot of curiosity. People trying, you know, everyone wants to kind of figure out what's going on. I would assume that a lot of people here in Green Isle have heard the news about Boelter and that he owned a property out here. So they probably can infer that that is, you know, the scene that's going on, but just a lot of curiosity as things have ratcheted up. We've seen a lot of people drive by, you know, holding their cell phones, taking videos of the scene. So that is what, you know, the onlookers are they're just kind of standing here with us, with all of the media, and seeing as this scene develops rapidly right now as more and more law enforcement arrive.
Yeah, and we know Green Isle is not really all that big of a community, several hundred people with a population of a small farming community from our understanding as well. So I'm sure a lot of people there are pretty curious and perhaps shaken up that this is impacting their town in this way. Thank you so much, Joe. We are awaiting word of any updates from authorities, but as of right now, there are no planned news conferences. We'll, of course, bring you those live as they happen. The last time we heard from the BCA was yesterday afternoon when they walked us through what exactly happened in their search for Vance Boelter. So we're going to go ahead and listen to some of the key moments of that news conference.
Today, we are asking for the public's help at this point in time in locating Vance Luther Boelter, who is a 57-year-old white male who's 6 feet 1 inch tall, 220 pounds with brown hair and brown eyes. I know this name has been reported in the media so far, and we are confirming he's a person of interest that we are looking to locate in relation to this. At this time, we would ask the public, if you do locate him or see him, to call 911. Do not approach him. You should consider him armed and dangerous, and you should call 911 immediately with the information. He was seen this morning wearing light-colored cowboy hat that you can see up here in the clothing there, with dark-colored long-sleeve collared shirt or coat, light pants, and carrying a dark bag. If you have any tips about the whereabouts or any information that would be helpful, you can call local police department, or you can call our BCA tip line at 877-996-6222, or email us at bca.tips@state.mn.us. We still don't know if additional people are involved, but this individual is the one that we're looking as a person of interest right now, but there may be other people with him, and we would like to speak to anybody that may have had contact with him at any point in time. So please connect with us, even if this has been some time ago today, so that we can follow up and continue to work together to keep our communities safe.
And we want you to take a look at your screen. This is another picture of Boelter taken yesterday morning in Minneapolis. If you have any sort of information about his whereabouts, you are asked to call the number on your screen. That phone number is 877-996-6222. There is now a $50,000 award for any sort of information leading to his arrest, and he should also be considered armed and dangerous. Now, this morning on NBC's Meet the Press, Senator Amy Klobuchar did talk about the latest on the search for the suspect. Here's what she had to say.
Well, for a while, they believed that he was in one certain area, and he may have been there for a while, so they had thousands of homes in a shelter-in-place situation. Now they are continuing to look, and so the FBI is asking for the public's help with a $50,000 award. You've got many images of them. To me, the most chilling image is the one where he is apparently wearing some kind of mask. It's a doorbell camera, like so many people have, but it's the doorbell right before he killed our friends. And so that was that image. And then later they saw him with the cowboy hat, out and about. And so he is somewhere. They are looking for him everywhere. He is smart. He was able to, imposture a police officer, soup up a car so it seemed like a police car. And so I know law enforcement has been very clear about this, that people should not approach him, but they should immediately call the tip lines and report, because we believe he's somewhere in the vicinity and that they are going to find him. But right now, everyone on edge here, because we know that this man will kill at a second. We also know that he is clearly off balance, that from the manifesto on, some of his writings, some of the things that he has said recently, that he is someone that no one should mess with except for law enforcement.
Senator Klobuchar also spoke about the legacy and the impact of former Representative and House Leader Melissa Hortman. Hortman, who was 55, had been the top Democratic leader in the state house since 2017. She did lead the Democrats in a 3-week boycott or walkout at the beginning of this year's legislative session in a power struggle with Republicans. And under a power sharing agreement, she turned the gavel over to Republican Representative Lisa Demuth and assumed the title Speaker Emerita. Hortman used her position as Speaker in 2023 to champion expanded protections for abortion rights, including legislation to solidify Minnesota's status as a refuge for patients from restrictive states who travel to the state to seek abortions, and to protect providers who serve them as well. We also want to mention this morning, Governor Tim Walz did tweet about former Speaker Hortman. He says she was the most consequential speaker in state history. That was this morning. We also, of course, want to talk about State Senator John Hoffman. He's 60 years old, was first elected in 2012, and is also the chair of the Senate Human Services Committee, which oversees one of the biggest parts of the state budget, as well as he does have a wife and, of course, one daughter. We know that he and his wife were both shot multiple times Saturday morning in this attack. We also know that he and his wife were operated on. They are now out of surgery. And of course, we are praying for their full recovery. We've also confirmed with a family member of theirs that his wife Yvette actually was able to jump on top of or in front of their daughter as this attacker was shooting at them, therefore protecting her daughter. And so, of course, just what a heroic act from that mother trying to protect their child. We are following breaking news in this ongoing search for Vance Boelter. He's the man who is suspected of shooting 2 Minnesota lawmakers and their spouses. And we want to just recap for you what's happened in the past 36 hours or so and what's led to this massive manhunt that is currently happening right now. Authorities say a man who was posing as a police officer shot and killed DFL Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband early Saturday in a brazen attack at their Brooklyn Park home. And a short time before then, authorities say that same man shot and injured State Senator John Hoffman and his wife at their home in Champlin. State authorities say the suspect posed as a police officer, even had some lights flashing on his vehicle, some makeshift sirens of some sort. And inside that vehicle, which authorities did recover at one of the scenes, they say they found no King's flyers and a manifesto that mentions several DFL lawmakers. Those flyers you can see on your screen right now were referring to massive protests that were set to take place across the country this weekend. Now, authorities say that officers confronted the suspect at one of the scenes, and after an exchange of gunfire, he then ran away. And that then led to a massive manhunt and searches of his home in Green Isle, as well as another home that he rented, sometimes resided at in North Minneapolis. Now, this morning, that search is ongoing. And we do want to take a look at where that search for Boelter appears to be focused right now. So an emergency alert was sent out about an hour and a half ago for folks living in Sibley County near Faxon Township. This is not a shelter in place, but authorities are urging anybody who's in the area to be careful and to make sure their homes and their vehicles are locked. Our Joe McCoy has been out there for several hours now and joins us live with the very latest. Joe, what is happening?
Ryan, these past few minutes, it's been a bit quieter in terms of we haven't seen any more law enforcement come into the scene here since we saw that massive ratcheting up of law enforcement when we saw those multiple SWAT teams arrive, multiple K-9 units arrive. So since then, there hasn't been any more law enforcement, but they are all still stationed down there. My photographer can zoom in here and show you as much as we can from where we're at. We've been on scene since about 8:45 this morning, and when that massive sea of law enforcement came in, that was by far the most we've seen since we've been here. I do want to take some video of the car that is located down there near that property that is down there. It was confirmed that this was a car that was related to Vance Boelter in terms of, was related to this scene here. There also was a cowboy hat that was found down there. It has not been confirmed by officials that that was the cowboy hat that Boelter was wearing, but it does look remarkably similar to the one that he was wearing in that photo that was captured by security camera. So there's the car down there, there's the cowboy hat, and then there's also a property down there behind those trees down there that has had a massive law enforcement presence around it this entire morning, but things have really ratcheted up in the past 15 to 20 minutes. What we've also seen is a lot more onlookers here in the community are pulling up and just kind of looking around, trying to figure out what's happening. We've had a lot of people pull up to our vehicle here asking us, hey, do you guys know anything more? So of course, people in the community are stunned that something like this is going on where they live in a small rural community of Green Isle that is less than 600 people. But it definitely seems that something is going on down there. We, of course, do not have any specific details because of how far backed up we are, because this is the perimeter that law enforcement has set. We also, I do want to mention, we saw a skid loader come in with the South Metro SWAT unit. We also saw a Burnsville Mobile Command Center and the Bloomington Bomb Squad. So that is in addition to those multiple SWAT teams, those multiple K-9 units that have also arrived on scene here. So we're kind of in wait and see mode, Raya. We haven't heard any official word from authority about what exactly is going on down there. We, of course, do not know right now if 57-year-old Vance Boelter is down there or what exactly law enforcement is looking for, or what exactly the scene is. But we can, of course, just only report the presence of law enforcement that we are seeing, and we will, of course, wait for official word from authorities if things, develop and they have some word for us.
Yeah, and we should also mention that emergency alert that was sent out a little after 10 o'clock, Joe, that you received on your phone. You sent us a screenshot of that. Authorities in that alert said not only that people should be keeping their doors locked and their vehicles secured, but also that law enforcement will also be going from home to home in order to ask to search people's properties. So that is an alert that's still in effect. And of course, they're asking people to report any suspicious activity to 911 as well. Joe is in Sibley County. This is near Green Isle, where we know that the suspect had a home, allegedly lived with his wife as well as several kids. But we also know that he had a different place of residence in North Minneapolis as well. We know from talking to his roommates that he stayed there perhaps a couple of days a week. And so there are still a lot of questions about that residence as well. But we also have a lot of questions about Vance Boelter's wife and her current status. In the last few hours, we confirmed through the Mille Lacs County Sheriff that a car was pulled over in Onamia, and Boelter's wife was in that car along with other relatives, but he wasn't in the car himself. Of course, he's still not been located. But the sheriff says there were people who were detained who were in that car, and it's not clear right now if the wife was among them. So this is all coming out as we await for any sort of word on when we'll be able to get an update today from authorities and state leaders. Audrey Russo's been at the operations center, the emergency operations center in Blaine all morning, just kind of on standby, awaiting any sort of official briefing or any sort of updates from officials. That's where we were receiving all of that information yesterday, where the governor was as well. So what is it like there this morning? Not as many people, and of course, not as many updates, it sounds like, Audrey.
Yeah, they've told us that as soon as there is an update, we will be made aware of this. So the mood in here right now is really just kind of a watchful wait stance as we await for any updates. But as it stands right now, none of them have been scheduled. But I think, in all of this, it's easy to lose sight of some of the most tragic headlines. So I do want to bring some of the attention back to the most tragic headline easily of this entire story, which is that of former House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband. They were shot at their home in Brooklyn Park, killed in what officials have been calling an act of political violence. Now, the suspect, we know, had a list of names in his car, was found by police, consisting of multiple Democratic lawmakers and pro-choice activists. Now, we know that Senator Hoffman and Representative Hortman were not at the top of that list. So some of the questions that we have this morning, why were they targeted out of all the names on that list? Any more information on a motive? And some of those answers could come from the suspect, Vance Boelter's associates, from his family. Now, Raya, you mentioned, of course, that his wife was stopped in Mille Lacs County in Onamia, 100 plus miles north of their home address. We're wondering at this moment if she knew anything about the attack that her husband is now the main suspect in, or how much she may have known, if anything at all. Raya?
All right, Audrey, thank you very much. We certainly do appreciate your reporting. We do want to tell you a little bit more about Representative Melissa Hortman. She was 60 years old, first elected back in we are actually talking about State Senator John Hoffman first elected in 2012. And before we get there, we do want you to take a look at your screen. This is all of the information in which you're able to contact authorities if you have any sort of tips about where Vance Boelter may be. That tip line is 877-996-6222. You can also email bca.tips@state.mn.us. We also know this morning on NBC's Meet the Press, Senator Amy Klobuchar spoke about the manifesto that the authorities found in the suspect's car.
Clearly, this is politically motivated. Our delegation in Minnesota, from the most conservative Republican to the most liberal Democrat, we all joined together, Senator Emmer and I and others, and said we condemn this political violence. It was politically motivated, and there clearly was some through line with abortion because of the groups that were on the list and other things that I've heard were in this manifesto. So that was one of his motivations. But again, they're also checking out, did he have interaction somehow with these two legislators? Is there more to this? And I think for us right now, is allowing law enforcement to do their jobs instead of speculating on every angle of where he might have gone. They obviously have information we don't have. And so what we've been trying to do as political leaders is make really clear, we will have plenty of time to analyze what happened here. But right now it is trying to report any sighting of this person and to be very careful and to listen to what law enforcement says, because the advice has changed for obvious reasons over time. And that is what we've got to do right now.
That was Senator Amy Klobuchar talking this morning. Well, from Brooklyn Park to Champlin, neighbors are shocked by what they saw and experienced as yesterday's events unfolded. Ian Russell heard from some of them.
In the wake of tragedy,
it was pretty intense. Yeah, pretty scary.
Compassion remains.
The Hoffmans, they give king size or full size candy bars out at Halloween. Yeah, they're real nice personal.
An early morning attack in Champlin.
I can think pop, 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 right? For sure 3.
Shaking the neighbors of State Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette.
I mean, things can happen anywhere, but when it's just literally that close to home, it's kind of nerve-wracking a little bit.
Police say 57-year-old Vance Boelter started his attacks on lawmakers at the Hoffman home, disguised as law enforcement.
I just saw it. It looked like a police car.
Just a few miles away in Brooklyn Park,
It's hard to see today.
actual police took that car, left after Boelter shot and killed Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband, Mark.
Yeah, we got to know each other, really well over the last few years. So this is definitely heartbreaking.
Here, though, it was never Representative, only Melissa and Mark.
We never talked politics. We just talked about our dogs and the weather and how things were in the neighborhood.
Corey Leaf says he'll miss that.
Happy. And that's how we always thought of them.
In the wake of tragedy, compassion holds on tight.
Devastating. It's wrong. It shouldn't have happened.
Even as pain stays close by.
I want people to remember them just as great people, not as a Democrat or not as a Republican. Just they were great people.
Ian Russell.
A big devastating loss.
KARE 11 News.
They were, of course, public servants, too. Representative Melissa Hortman, who was 55, had been the top Democratic leader in the state house since 2017. She led Democrats in a 3-week walkout at the beginning of this year's legislative session in a power struggle with Republicans. And then, under a power-sharing agreement, she turned the gavel over to Republican Representative Lisa Demuth, who assumed the title, Melissa Hortman, then assumed the title of Speaker Emerita. Hortman used her position as Speaker in 2023 to champion expanded protections for abortion rights, including legislation to solidify Minnesota's status as a refuge for patients from restrictive states who traveled to the state to seek abortions and to protect providers who served them as well. Now, State Senator John Hoffman, who was 60 years old, was first elected in 2012. He was also the chair of the Senate Human Services Committee, which oversees one of the biggest parts of the state budget. He and his wife also have one daughter. Reactions have poured in from politicians across the country, everyone from President Donald Trump to former President Joe Biden and former Minnesota Governor Tim Pawlenty. Danny Spiewak spoke with members of both our state legislature, as well as our congressional delegation as they reeled from this weekend's news.
There is a deep sense of pain in the Minnesota legislature right now. Just days after finishing their budget, lawmakers are grieving the loss of one of their most established members and waiting anxiously for updates on a beloved state senator. In the most narrowly divided legislature in Minnesota history, Representative Melissa Hortman played a key role in delivering a state budget this session.
I think that there's a lot for Minnesotans to be pleased about.
As leader of the DFL caucus in the tied House, Hortman negotiated across the aisle with GOP Speaker Lisa Demuth to find compromise.
She had grace. She was someone that was just a decent person.
U.S. Senator Amy Klobuchar met Hortman 2 decades ago when she was county attorney and Hortman was running for the legislature.
It seemed like she knew everyone in her district back then, and I think she, to the end, did. She cared about people so much.
The murder of Hortman and her husband, Mark, stunned Klobuchar and fellow U.S. Senator Tina Smith, the former lieutenant governor, who also worked closely with Hortman at the Capitol.
My friend Melissa, who I cannot believe is gone, and I'm bereft, and I'm grateful to have a chance to tell people who didn't know her what a wonderful person she was.
As Speaker of the House from 2019 until this year, Hortman was remembered fondly for her sense of humor, like when she removed the Speaker's mute button.
We thought about, should we change it to an auto-tune button? Should we have a laugh track? Any other special sound effects? But we went with nothing.
Republicans like Representative Nolan West also enjoyed working with Hortman.
She's pretty funny. She usually had a good quip, but she's very down to business and efficient, undeniably impressive leader. And I thought that before today.
Meanwhile, in the Senate, John Hoffman's colleagues are praying for he and his wife's recovery.
John is probably the most gregarious colleague of ours.
Republican Senator Zach Duckworth credits Hoffman for his important work as chair of the Human Services Committee.
Trying to help our most vulnerable Minnesotans, and he's got a track record of doing that for decades. Just a very kind man.
On the night of the special session, Hoffman talked about working with Republicans on the budget.
We left our egos in the hallway and was really looking at what's our purpose, what's our intent, right? If we're going to preserve the services and supports for people.
Reflecting on the budget herself just a few days ago at an interview in her office.
It was really a big win for the people of Minnesota.
Representative Hortman also praised the legislature's bipartisanship and promised Minnesotans more of the same in years ahead.
They expect their government to work, and it is going to do that for them.
Hortman worked side by side with Republican Speaker Lisa Demuth all session. And today, Demuth said in a statement that she is devastated by the loss and that Hortman was respected by everybody at the Capitol. Danny Spiewak, KARE 11 News.
All right, this just into our newsroom. We want you to take a look. A statement from the owner of Metro First Call, where Boelter worked until just a few months ago, did issue this statement. It says, "We would like to extend our thoughts and condolences to the families of Representative Hortman as well as Senator Hoffman. This is devastating news for all involved. As far as Vance Boelter is concerned, he did work for our company from August 28th, 2023 until he voluntarily left on February 20th of 2025. To say anything more at this time would be irresponsible as the investigation continues." Again, that is a statement from the owner of Metro First Call, who we've now confirmed is a former employer of Boelter, Vance Boelter, 57-year-old man who is now at the center of this massive manhunt. And if you're just now tuning in, we do want to recap what's happened within the last 36 hours that's led us to this point. Authorities say a man who was posing as a police officer shot and killed DFL Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband early Saturday morning in a brazen attack at their Brooklyn Park home. A short time before then, authorities say that same man shot and injured State Senator John Hoffman and his wife at their home in Champlin. State authorities say the suspect posed as a police officer. He even had lights as well as sirens on his vehicle. And inside that vehicle, which they recovered at one of the scenes, they say they found flyers that said "No Kings" on them, referring to protests that were taking place, as well as a manifesto that mentions several DFL lawmakers. Authorities say officers confronted the suspect at one of the scenes, and after an exchange of gunfire, he then ran away. That did lead to this massive manhunt and searches of his home in Green Isle, as well as a home in North Minneapolis where he rented and sometimes resided. Now, this morning, that search is still ongoing. We do want to take a look at the search. This is where Boelter, the search appears to be focused for Boelter right now. An emergency alert was sent out about an hour and a half ago for folks who are in Sibley County near Faxon Township and Highway 25. Now, this is not a shelter in place, but authorities are urging anybody in the area to be extra careful, make sure their doors and their homes and vehicles are locked. Joe McCoy has been out there for several hours now, giving us the most up-to-date information at that scene as law enforcement continues to roll in. Joe, what are you seeing at this moment?
Well, Ryan, it's just been stunning developments this morning in the search for 57-year-old Vance Boelter. We've been on scene here since 8:45. Now this police presence has been here throughout the morning and now into the early afternoon. And within the past hour, the law enforcement presence has ratcheted up considerably. We've had multiple SWAT units arrive on scene. We've had multiple canine units arrive on scene. We also had a skid loader arrive on scene. That was with the South Metro SWAT unit. We've had a bomb squad arrive on scene. All of this happening very rapidly this morning. And as I mentioned, now into the early afternoon here in small rural Green Isle, this town, population less than 600. This whole scene, this is along Highway 25 here between Green Isle and Belle Plaine here in Sibley County. And I want to show some video that we have of this black vehicle that has been identified as a vehicle that is related to this scene. In the emergency alert, they said that the suspect's vehicle was located. That is that black car. And then there also was a cowboy hat that was located right along the side of the road. That cowboy hat was not thrown anywhere. It was not trying to be hidden. That cowboy hat has not been confirmed by officials that it was indeed Boelter's cowboy hat, but it does look remarkably similar to the one that Vance Boelter was wearing in that photo that was captured by security cameras. So Raya, right now we are in wait and see mode until we hear any official word from authorities about what exactly is going on down the road here on Highway 25. We do know that there is a property back there that has had a large police presence around it all morning and into the early afternoon now. But of course, we have no idea if Vance Boelter is down there or if police have located him. None of those questions do we have answers to right now. So we are, of course, going to wait for official word from authorities to deliver any of that information. All we can report on is the incredibly large police presence that is here in Green Isle along Highway 25, and that has only ratcheted up this morning. And also, Raya, as this scene has continued to develop, we've seen more and more onlookers from the community. People, of course, wondering what is going on. We've had multiple people pull up to our news vehicle asking us if we know anything, have any information. So you can see the sense of the community, the curiosity, of course, of everyone trying to figure out what exactly is going on back there. And is Vance Boelter potentially there? We, of course, do not know at this time. So we have throughout the day today and also yesterday, Raya, I've been on scene here in Green Isle. Yesterday, we were at the staging area where there was a very large police presence that was going to and from Boelter's property that is located in Green Isle. And I've talked with many people throughout the community. I even stopped at a gas station and talked to the woman at the counter there. No one I personally have talked to knows Vance Boelter. They didn't know people in his family. I even this morning talked to the closest neighbors because we were able to get closer to the property this morning. The closest neighbors didn't have anything to add about who he was. They didn't really know him. So no one in Green Isle that we have talked to knows anything really about Vance Boelter. So just an incredible development this morning as they have found the vehicle related to Vance Boelter, a cowboy hat that again looks remarkably similar to the one that he was wearing yesterday. And now law enforcement ratcheting up their presence here along Highway 25 as the search and manhunt for 57-year-old Vance Boelter continues. Raya?
Well, and I know, Joe, you've mentioned time and time again, this is such a big presence. Any idea of how many different agencies are out there and if they're all, Minnesota based? What are we looking at in terms of this sort of response?
I don't want to put a number to it, Raya, because I don't have that number, frankly, because there's been so many. We do know that there was a Burnsville Mobile Command Center on scene. We know the South Metro SWAT unit was on scene, a Bloomington bomb squad. I believe we saw another presence from Egan. That was a K-9 unit from Egan. Those are just the units that I've seen personally with my own eyes. Of course, Sibley County is here because that's the county where we are in. And of course, State Patrol has been on scene the entire morning. So those are the specific names of agencies that I can deliver to you that I've seen with my own eyes. But I don't want to put a number on how many police vehicles or police presence is down here because it's quite frankly I can't give an accurate estimate. We just know it's been an incredibly large presence throughout the morning that has only escalated since we have been here since about 8:45.
Yeah, and a lot of teamwork, it sounds like, as well. Thank you very much, Joe. We appreciate your reporting out there. This morning, Senator Amy Klobuchar did appear on NBC's Meet the Press, and she spoke about what made former House Speaker Melissa Hortman such a special leader.
We started out together in politics, moms with young kids, and somehow she was able to balance getting to know every door knock, every house in her district, while raising two children, Girl Scout leader. She taught Sunday school, and maybe all that juggling made it easier for her as she worked her way up in the legislature and became this extraordinary Speaker of the House, ushering in everything from free school lunch to working with the governor and other leaders to do some landmark legislation on paid family leave, to this year working with her Republican counterpart when we pretty much had a tied legislature to get the budget done. That's Melissa Hortman, my friend. And when you think about political violence and the statistics of political violence, you've got to realize the people who are behind it and a true public servant that we lost.
Senator Klobuchar also spoke about the manhunt still unfolding before our very eyes, as well as the latest on the condition of Senator John Hoffman and his wife. Listen.
He's another extraordinary person, got into politics because his daughter has spina bifida, couldn't get insurance coverage, and went from a school board to the state legislature, also really well respected. And what I know about them is that they are hanging in there. His wife was out of surgery first, and she's actually texted some of our mutual friends, and he may face some additional surgeries, but he is also in stable condition right now, from what I know. So they had multiple gun wounds and were able to, the first responders were there, the police were there, got them to the hospital, and then had the presence of mind to go over to Leader Hortman's house. And that's where they found this perpetrator, this man who seemed to have no limits in terms of the murderous acts that he committed.
An unbelievable situation. If you're just now joining us, we do want to catch you up on exactly what's happening. Within the past 2 hours, an emergency alert went out to people living in Sibley County, near where authorities believe they found the suspect's vehicle near Highway 25 in Faxon Township. That area is now closed off, and we've seen several metro agencies responding to help in the search there. They're telling people to use caution, make sure that they're keeping their homes and their vehicles locked. We do want to emphasize this is not a shelter in place, but an important reminder to be very careful. Law enforcement within that alert also saying that they will be going to area homes and residences to search the properties, and any suspicious activity should be reported to 911. We also want to take a look at a map. This is showing us exactly where this is happening right now. Highway 25, it's about halfway between Green Isle and Belle Plaine, and there is a very large police presence. Green Isle is where the 57-year-old suspect reportedly owns a home. Joe McCoy has been there live all morning, and of course, we'll continue checking in with him as the morning goes on. But reaction has been pouring in from Minnesota lawmakers, both sides of the aisle, including former Governor Tim Pawlenty, who's simply upset by this rhetoric.
I was just stunned. It's almost like something out of a bad horror movie, the facts of this. And I'm so sad, and I'm sad for the Hortman family, and I hope and pray the Hoffmans come through this after the surgery okay in terms of their medical recovery. And then I also just feel bad about how Minnesota's sort of civic and political fabric seems to be so torn, and our tradition of great civility seems to be slipping away. And I hope we can all find a way to get back to a better place. Well, things have become more and more polarized, but even when I served, and I was a state legislator and of course governor, and many death threats. I lived part-time in a suburban home in Eagan, not in the governor's residence, sometimes with security, sometimes not. Many times answering the door, or a family member having to answer the door if I was gone. And you have a lot of people out there who say and do threatening things, and it's going to have a chilling effect on our discourse, on our political leaders, but importantly also their families. Can you imagine being the child or a spouse, a significant other of a political leader in this environment? Every time you open the door, every time you go to the grocery store, you don't know who is just going to question you or who might harm you.
Hard to imagine indeed. If you're just now joining us, we do want to recap what's happened within the past 36 hours ago and what's led up to this massive manhunt that is currently still unfolding. Authorities say a man who was posing as a police officer shot and killed DFL Representative Melissa Hortman, as well as her husband, early Saturday morning in a brazen attack at their Brooklyn Park home. In a short time before then, authorities say the same man shot and injured State Senator John Hoffman, as well as his wife, at their home in Champlin. We do know the Hoffmans are now recovering. State authorities say the suspect posed as a police officer and had his lights flashing, as well as some sirens on that vehicle. And that vehicle inside of there, they say they recovered at one of the scenes, and they found no King's flyers within that vehicle on the passenger seat. That's referring to those massive protests that were set to take place this weekend. Also, they say that they found a manifesto that mentioned several DFL lawmakers. And also, they say that authorities then confronted that suspect at one of the scenes after an exchange of gunfire, and then he ran away. And that's led up to this massive manhunt currently unfolding. Searches of his home in Green Isle also took place, as well as a different home in North Minneapolis, where they say that he was renting, staying there perhaps a couple of times a week. And of course, that search is still ongoing this morning. And we want to take a look at the map. This is where the search for Vance Boelter appears to be focused right now. This is between Green Isle as well as Belle Plaine in Sibley County. An emergency alert was issued about an hour and a half ago for the folks who are living in Sibley County. This is near Faxon Township. It's not a shelter in place, but authorities are urging anybody in that area to be very careful, to make sure their homes and their vehicles are locked. They also say that law enforcement in that area will be going to area homes, making sure they're checking the properties, any sort of surveillance footage that may be able to help in this search, or any sort of evidence or anything that can really help them. Our Joe McCoy has been out there for several hours now and joins us live with the latest developments. Of course, a big police presence as we know it, and a lot of teamwork from many different agencies out there, Joe.
Yep, absolutely right. We just saw the Scott County Sheriff speed down the road here. So just another agency on scene here. As we've mentioned, multiple agencies on scene. We've had ambulances, we've had canine units, multiple canine units, multiple SWAT units from the South Metro SWAT unit. There was also a skid loader that was on scene. So as you mentioned, that teamwork, Raya, multiple agencies from the Metro, from all over, coming together to this presence here that is along Highway 25 in between Green Isle and Belle Plaine, where we have been all morning. We arrived on scene around 8:45. There was already a decently sized law enforcement presence here. We know at that time the Sibley County Sheriff's Office was here. We know that State Patrol was here. And the reason, presumably, they were here was because there was a black car that was located that at the time they said was a car of interest, but now it has been confirmed that that car was indeed the suspect's vehicle, Vance Boelter's vehicle, or one that he was driving. There also was then a cowboy hat that was found. It has not been confirmed that that cowboy hat was Vance Boelter's cowboy hat, but if you look at the pictures, it does look remarkably similar to the one that Vance Boelter was wearing in the photo that was captured by security cameras. So that was initially, Raya, just to kind of take people through our process, that was why we initially came down here to Green Isle again this morning. So we came down to Green Isle because we were told that potentially there was a law enforcement presence down here, potentially there was a vehicle of interest. Well, we came down here, saw that vehicle of interest, saw that cowboy hat that was laying on that side of the road there. And then the situation has only ratcheted up from here as more and more law enforcement agencies have arrived, and as SWAT teams have arrived now, and bomb squads have arrived. So not just State Patrol and county sheriffs. This is extremely heavy duty police presence here. This town here in Green Isle, it's rural. It's less than 600 people. And we've seen a lot of community members come and go and ask us questions, members of the media, what's going on. Of course, a lot of curiosity in the community of what is going on down there. Why is there so many police agencies in our community? And so we've seen many gawkers come and go, and also there's been a lot more media that has come. Initially, when we were here around 8:45, there was us, maybe one other media organization, but now more and more media has come to this scene, as also the law enforcement presence has really ratcheted up here. And I've mentioned that I've talked to people in the community. No one that I have talked to knows Vance Boelter or his family. So I just want to make it very clear for people. We do not know what is going on down there, down the road here on Highway 25. We do not know why there is such an increased police presence down there. We have no idea whether Vance Boelter himself is down there. We are just reporting what we have been seeing with this increased police presence throughout the morning and now into the early afternoon. We've now been here for over 4 hours now, Raya, and this scene has only continued to get larger, and the State Patrol has asked us to back up multiple times. So that's why we're not, of course, able to get close to the scene for security reasons, as we let law enforcement, do their thing. And hopefully we can receive some official word later in the day from law enforcement about what exactly is going on back there.
Joe, thank you very much for your reporting. Of course, we're not in the business of speculation, so thank you for reporting what's been confirmed and what you're seeing on the ground. We certainly do appreciate it. And we do want to let you know a little bit more about who Representative Melissa Hortman was. She was 55 years old, had been the top Democratic leader in the state house since 2017. She led Democrats in a 3-week boycott or walkout at the beginning of this year's legislative session in what was a power struggle with Republicans. Under a power sharing agreement, she then turned the gavel over to Republican Representative Lisa Dameth and then assumed this title as Speaker Emerita. Hortman used her position as Speaker in 2023 to champion expanded protections for abortion rights, including legislation to solidify Minnesota's status as a refuge for patients from restrictive states who traveled to our state to seek abortions and to protect providers who serve them. Now, State Senator John Hoffman, who was also injured in a different but related shooting, of course, was 60 years old. He was first elected in 2012 and was the chair of the Senate Human Services Committee, which oversees one of the biggest parts of the state budget. He and his wife have one daughter. We know that he and his wife are now out of surgery and are recovering. They were both shot multiple times. We also heard from former Minnesota Senator Jeff Hayden, who's remembering Representative Melissa Hortman as a good friend and a great public servant. Here's what he had to say.
She was smart. She was capable. She was approachable. She was courageous. She loved her family. I was said I love to play golf. Don't do it that well, and would often see her in a couple of tournaments that I played in. She loved to have you over for a glass of lemonade as you were playing. She just was that type of person beyond being a very smart and skilled politician and policymaker. It's really unimaginable. I have a friend that lives just a couple blocks away, and he was saying the same thing this morning, that it's just unimaginable. As for John and Yvette, I just wish them a speedy recovery. I know them really well, know their family, and the stories that Yvette was, getting in the way of those bullets so that it didn't hit their daughter Hope, who they love as we all love our children, beyond what you could imagine, just the courage that they have. And so I wish them a speedy recovery. I will just say, John loves the work. He loved being the chair of the Human Service Committee because it really served his passion. And there is no stronger advocate in this state around people with disabilities than Senator Hoffman, Chair Hoffman. So I wish him a speedy recovery. I hope to, hopefully, in due time, be able to have a good conversation with him. But it is a tragedy of an unimaginable magnitude, and this idea that there's a manifesto and there's a list and other of friends, and I've talked to some other legislators and others that are just can't even fathom and are still really worried that the person's at large and they had intentions for other legislators that appeared.
Today.
So I was out on my porch from 2:30 to 4:30, and around 2:30 I had two shots towards the neighbor's house this way, which I just talked to before. That was some other random thing. But then I went back in the house at 4:30, laid down for about an hour, came back out on the porch till 7. I never saw any lights or sirens.
So, of course, gunshots, we don't know exactly what that means. If it means that somebody else was potentially shot at, if it means that somebody potentially shot, if the suspect potentially shot himself, those are all questions that are unanswered. We're looking into all those things right now. But there is a huge focus on that area. And just within the last couple of minutes here, a dozen state patrol and tactical, with their tactical gear, got out of their cars in the area where our crews are located. So we're just learning information here minute by minute. There's a look. It's a very heavy, concentrated law enforcement presence right now.
Absolutely. And if you're in that area, of course, there's an emergency alert. So be very aware and cautious today until this search is called off. That's the update for now. We'll continue breaking in briefly if there's any new information. For now, we'll return you to the U.S. Open.
We now return you to our regularly scheduled program in progress.
Welcome back to our live coverage on the Care 11 Plus app of a manhunt currently underway in Sibley County, about 2 miles from the property owned by Vance Boelter. He's the 57-year-old man police believe is responsible for the political assassination of Representative Melissa Hortman and the shooting death of her husband, and also Senator Hoffman and his wife's multiple injuries sustained yesterday. They did find his car, they believe, in this area, as well as the cowboy hat he was wearing. And all morning, we've been watching as the law enforcement presence in this area continues to grow. Armored vehicles, local law enforcement, SWAT vehicles, they keep congregating in this area. I'm joined by Lou Ragoose, who talked to a neighbor, got sound from a neighbor earlier today saying that overnight he heard gunshots, 2 gunshots in that area. Lou, the car being found, significant update, the hat just sitting seemingly on the side of the road. Lots of questions still. We don't have a lot of answers, just a lot of pictures of massive law enforcement presence.
Yeah, a lot of tidbits of information though, and also very urgently, the community around that area are being told to stay in their homes, so that there's a belief, that there's no all clear. They don't know exactly, what is going on as far as where Vance Boelter currently is. Those gunshots, I've confirmed that the authorities are looking into that. What that means exactly, though, is a huge question mark. Does it mean that he fired at somebody? Does it mean that he killed himself out there? Or was it completely unrelated, or did the neighbor mishear? Those are all open questions. We're just reporting what we know and what we've been able to confirm so far.
Last night when we ended our coverage, we had heard on the dispatch calls that they had expanded the search to South Dakota and that he may have been traveling with another man. Do you have any updates on that?
Absolutely. So that was a call, a be on the lookout call to South Dakota. I don't think that there was confirmation that he was traveling with this other man, but that the car was registered in this man's name. So we don't know how Vance Boelter obtained this car. It was a Buick, by the way, and they put out the be on the lookout for this specific Buick 4-door car with a specific Minnesota license plate, registered to a Minnesota man who they don't know what the relationship is. Did Vance Boelter steal this car? Was it given to him, or was he traveling with this man? Those were all open questions. The car that was found on the roadside there this morning was a Buick. Now, we don't know for sure that it's the very same Buick. We don't have a license plate number to cross-reference from what was seen out there this morning. But one other tidbit that I have confirmed regarding a Buick is that Vance Boelter was known to be in a Buick in Minneapolis and withdrew money from a bank.
The morning after?
Yes, after the shooting.
Assassination.
And that's where some of those surveillance photos that we've seen came from, of him with the cowboy hat. So there's a look at the Buick that was found. And, from that shot, you can't see the license plate, so I can't cross-reference with the South Dakota. Now, as far as the information, that went out to law enforcement in South Dakota just to be on the lookout. So we don't know the source of, where the information came from, that he may be entering the state of South Dakota or anything like that. They don't know, maybe he never even went that direction. But it was all,
So let's talk too about his wife. We understand there were developments on that front overnight and learned that she had been questioned. Her name is Jenny. I understand you did call her. It was going to voicemail yesterday, and today she answered.
Yes. So I reached her on the phone today. She answered the phone. And then once I identified myself and started asking questions, she very quickly hung up. So she is not in custody. And I was told that she was never actually arrested. So she was, the word that we told was detained. That's kind of a confusing word, what that means exactly. But essentially, they were stopped at a gas station in Onamia. And, they were looking for her when they were looking for him. They were looking for all, these connections. And they stopped her from leaving at that point, asked her questions, and performed a search. I've seen reported, certain items that she allegedly had with her in the vehicle. I don't have that confirmed right now, so I can't go too specifically into that sort of things. But I can report that it is an open question right now, how much, if anything, his wife, Jenny, knew about what Vance Boelter may have been planning or what he did after the fact. There was communication between the two in the form of text messages that is part of the investigation right now.
So in any news story these days, things start flying around social media. A lot of things we're working on confirming, can't confirm. Some things are just kind of outrageous conspiracy theories. But we know that from what you learned from sources overnight, obviously they questioned her, which you would expect in any case like this. And so there are a lot of theories that are flying about the wife and her involvement in what was found. The other thing that is generating a lot of discussion on social media that I've seen is, why would this man who's 57 years old have a roommate in Minneapolis? And there's confusion around, he's got this property in Green Isle, which is the area that they're all searching in right now, and then somehow also lived in Minneapolis. What can you clarify for our viewers?
Yeah, so they bought that home. The family bought the home in Green Isle in 2023. That's his family's home. He was doing some work with a couple of funeral homes or company, a funeral home and another company in the funeral industry in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And so this home with the roommate was basically like a crash pad. So this is one of his best friends, lifelong best friend of decades, who rented him a room to stay with him there. And
When
so
he worked late,
so he
or
wouldn't
didn't
have
want
to drive all the way down to
ostensibly.
Sibley County to go home and then come all the way back first thing in the morning. It was essentially a crash pad for him.
Okay, and you gave us phenomenal coverage yesterday, continuing overnight. What are the top 3 things you think are the most insightful, important, that you have been able to confirm and have learned so far about this investigation?
I thought the interview that we had, Michelle Beck interviewed the neighbor yesterday, and I think we had video of him reading the final
roommate,
text message, the roommate, yes. And that was very insightful, because I think a lot of people are trying to draw conclusions about motive and stuff like that already. One thing that the roommate mentioned was that the possibility of mental health issues. So that's come up already. And the roommate said that he was not the kind of guy who complained all the time about politics.
I thought that was interesting too. You would think, it clearly appears to be politically motivated for whatever reason, but you would think that would be an obsession, something that this Vance Boelter couldn't stop talking about if it had escalated to this level.
Yeah, and that's what I was, one of the points I was trying to make yesterday, is that you can't try to make sense out of stuff like this.
It's an irrational act.
Until all the information comes out and we know what led up to it and so forth.
Yeah, and frankly, even when all the information is out,
yeah,
whatever the reasons might be behind it, it's still a completely irrational act by a man who's clearly mentally ill.
Yeah, and somebody that his closest friends didn't think he had in him to do.
Right.
They are just completely shocked by the fact that his mind went to this place and he carried out what seemed to be a very planned out and plotted, execution.
So I think we had one more point left. If you're going to pick 3, are there 3, or you just think those
well,
are
I think
headlines?
some of them are open questions. And I think the open question regarding his wife is big, because that would go to, if she did know anything prior, then the question would be, well, how long was this thing thought out and planned? That's an open question. And whether she assisted in any way would be an open question. These are all things that are part of the investigation. That's very interesting to me. And then just ultimately the question is, where is he now? And that's,
obviously
that's the scary thing.
We're looking at live pictures right now of that remote rural area in Sibley County where that massive police force has gathered trying to find Vance Boelter. It's got to be unsettling for people who live there. And again, if you are in that area, it's very rural. What were we saying? 600 people or so in Green Isle, but unsettling for that community this morning for sure. And we're hoping everyone's staying in their homes, doors locked, and staying aware of the situation there. But when we were talking yesterday about his jobs, that also got very confusing, because Vance Boelter seemed to have many jobs. He seemed to be involved in all kinds of things, from a governor's development board. And just a little background for those of you who are just joining us, 57-year-old Vance Boelter was appointed by Governor Dayton to a development board, and then appointed by Governor Walz to another board that had to do with kind of the same topic. And Senator John Hoffman, who was shot multiple times yesterday, was also a member on one of these workplace development boards. And so that has also led to a lot of speculation as to the relationship between the governor and this Vance Boelter and whether or not they knew each other. And we should point out that appointments onto this board are not partisan necessarily. And hundreds or thousands of people can apply for spots on these 60 people boards. It's not like this was a person appointed to the governor's cabinet or some high level position.
Right.
What
I mean, another way to put that is, the governor doesn't go down the list and figure out
doesn't
who's a
necessarily know,
Democrat,
correct.
who's a good Democrat. That's not part of the consideration on this.
And whether or not the governor himself goes down that list, I would say is
Exactly,
highly
exactly,
questionable.
exactly.
So that is a very, very tenuous, at best, conclusion to draw that the governor had any idea who this man was before these events unfolded or ever. But he was on that board, ostensibly maybe was at a few meetings where Senator Hoffman may have attended as well. And our understanding is that he had registered as an independent at that time, or didn't really make his political affiliation at the time known. But so from that aspect of his past, then you go into the various jobs he held and this apparent nonprofit that he, I believe, had founded and had gone to the Congo a few times and worked with food distribution in that area, to the jobs he'd taken most recently at funeral homes, where he was responsible for transporting bodies to funeral homes for 2 different funeral homes, correct?
Yes. And so why don't we just back up a little bit as far as what he posts online on his online resume for
a lot of videos of him making their way around social media.
He says that he's worked for Nestle, for Johnsonville Sausage, for Del Monte Foods, for Green Corps, all food distribution companies. So he has this background in food distribution. And from videos that he's posted online, he's talked about that led to an opportunity in the Congo, where he went, one of the largest countries in Africa, where they import all their food. So they need people with this kind of experience in food sourcing. And so he did some work there. And then there are videos of him talking about, that experience overseas and so forth. Also on his online resume, he has listed himself as a general manager at a 7-Eleven. So kind of random in the midst of all that. And then what he said online regarding these funeral jobs is that he took it to pay the bills. And so he said that he worked for Wolf Funeral Home, and they are getting back to me right now with some dates and some specifics about that. And Metro First Call, which is essentially right here is a statement from the owner. I'll read this out loud here. We'd like to extend our thoughts and condolences to the families of Representative Hortman and Senator Hoffman. This is devastating news for all involved. As far as Vance Boelter is concerned, he worked for our company from August 28th, 2023, until he voluntarily left on February 20th, 2025. And so what he did for the Metro First Call, they're involved in the funeral business, where, for example, there's a body that needs to be transported when somebody dies from, like, let's say a nursing home or wherever, to the funeral home where the rest of the preparations for burial and cremation will be done. Metro First Call does a lot of those transports, and they even do some funeral services themselves. And Vance Boelter did that job of transporting the bodies. Okay, so that's some work that he did, in his own words, to pay the bills. And that's where that crash pad comes into play, because he'd be working these jobs and then stay overnight in North Minneapolis in between there. The other element, what we talked about yesterday, was this security company. And that's how he obtained vehicles that look like, or they're former police cars. The roommate that did the interview with us specified that was more of an idea he was trying to get off the ground. They have a website. His wife is listed as the CEO. He's listed at the head of security, and another man is listed as a worker there as well. But from what the roommate told us, it sounds as if he wasn't doing a lot of work in that yet and was still trying to get it off the ground.
And you had made calls, or maybe it was AJ, forgive me, about whether or not he was actually licensed to do that type of work. Was it AJ or was it you?
It must have been AJ, because I wasn't able to track any of that down.
Yeah, who said that he did not have a license for any private detective work or any security work in the state of Minnesota that we could find. Interestingly, too, AJ was looking back to find if there was any criminal record, and it's all really minor.
This
it's
is
like
speeding
speeding tickets.
Yep.
So if this is in fact him, and he broke into 2 homes and shot people multiple times, that's a stunning escalation for a man that does not have any type of criminal record.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let's check in now. Our Joe McCoy is live in Sibley County, where we mentioned right now there's a very active scene, a lot of law enforcement in that area searching for this man, Vance Boelter, who is believed to be responsible for the political assassination of Representative Hortman and the death of her husband. and for shooting both Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette multiple times. We did have one piece of really good news last night, which was that Yvette Hoffman was awake and that she was responding to people. We know that they were both shot multiple times, and we know that Senator Hoffman, while he was in stable condition and out of initial surgery, had more surgery ahead of him, and she may as well. But a little bit of good news there coming from the Hoffman family overnight. Let's head out now to our Joe McCoy and see what he's seeing on the scene there, about an hour southwest of the Twin Cities. Joe?
Yeah, absolutely, Julie. There's still an incredibly large police presence here in Green Isle. This is Highway 25 between Green Isle and Belle Plaine. My photographer and I, we have been on scene since about 8:45 this morning, and this police presence has only increased throughout the morning and now into the early afternoon. I do want to mention just about 10 minutes ago, the Bloomington bomb squad that had arrived earlier, they did leave the scene, but we saw go into the scene throughout the morning and the afternoon. We saw a K-9 unit from Eagan, multiple K-9 units. We saw multiple SWAT units, including a skid loader from the South Metro SWAT unit. So that is the type of law enforcement presence that we are talking about. And I want to go backwards a little bit, Julie, and inform people why this scene has become such the hub for law enforcement. So when we got here this morning, there was a black vehicle, and I want to take some video that we have. This black vehicle that at the time State Patrol was saying was a car of interest, and then was confirmed that car was linked to Boelter. We do not know if that car was actually registered to Boelter, or if it wasn't, how we got his hands on it. But we do know that that black car was related to this entire situation. There then was also that cowboy hat, Julie, that was just sitting there on the side of Highway 25. It has not been confirmed yet from officials if that cowboy hat was indeed 57-year-old Vance Boelter's, but if you look at the pictures, it does look remarkably similar to the one that Boelter was wearing in that photo that was captured by a security camera. So just so our viewers are aware and we're fully transparent, that is why my photographer and I initially got here this morning. And when we got here around 8:45, there was a large police presence. There was the Sibley County Sheriffs, there were deputies here, there was law enforcement. There also was a lot of law enforcement around a property that is right near where that car was and where that cowboy hat was. But the law enforcement presence that we saw earlier this morning and the law enforcement presence that we're seeing now, it's incredibly escalated now, Julie, as we've seen those SWAT units come in and we've seen those K-9 units. I want to be very clear to our viewers, we do not know what is going on down there. We have no idea if Vance Boelter is down there or what exactly officials are looking for. Of course, there's a very large perimeter here that has been set up by State Patrol, so we can no longer get anywhere near that property. And this kind of gives you an idea of what it was like earlier in the morning. When we got here around 8:45, we were able to go right up to that cowboy hat and take a picture of it. So it was a lot less police presence. And now here, there's a massive perimeter. There's multiple media agencies here. There's been onlookers throughout the day coming and going, asking us, hey, do you know anything? Have they captured the guy yet? So of course, a lot of curiosity, Julie, from the community. This is a small rural community. I see him. You're getting him.
Hello?
Did you get?
No, they didn't come through.
Yours?
Yeah.
Police helicopter or? Like they are leaving.
Yeah. I'm gonna go send in a couple.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna
law enforcement vehicles that I can see a little.
2.5 hours for an average person to walk, which fits the timeline. If he made it back to that house at about 6 a.m. after the 3:30 confrontation with the officer after the shootings in Brooklyn Park. And so the timing would make sense if he could make it to that house on foot. He had to get a car one way or another, whether that car, the be on the lookout that went out said that the Buick that they were looking for was registered to a different person. We don't know if this is somebody, and they were labeled as person of interest, which sometimes can mean suspect, but sometimes just somebody they want to
Like
talk to.
we just want to talk to you because your car is currently being used by this suspect.
And that's all. That this person's vehicle, it was registered in this other person's name.
And we don't know if it was stolen or if he knew the person and had permission to use it.
Those are all questions right now.
And we do know that his wife was questioned about 10:30 yesterday morning.
And by
10:30,
question,
11.
that's another thing where we don't know the extent of. Like we don't know if she sat down in an interrogation room and answered, all the questions that they wanted to ask, or if they stopped her on the side of the road or outside of the gas station in Onamia and did a search of the vehicle and asked her, a few different questions and then let her go. Like we just don't know all the granular details of the investigation. We know things in broader strokes.
So there are a lot of rumors on social media about what was found in the vehicle. Is there something that if they would have found in the vehicle in your experience with law enforcement, that they would have said, we're taking you in, we're not letting you go?
That could have been. I mean, there's some people,
but they didn't take her in.
There's some sources that I've shared what I've heard with them, and they would, in their responses, well, I'm surprised they didn't arrest her. But
we also don't know.
She's not charged. She's not accused of anything right now, so we have to tread lightly on that. It's just simply an open question. Did he share information with her? And and I don't know how much would be a crime if he did share it with her and she didn't report it. I'm not sure if that would be a crime. So it's hard to say, what involvement, if any, she has. It's just part of the investigation right now.
Okay, and lots of rumors. And as soon as we can confirm any of it, we will report it to you. Easy to post rumors online, of course. Well, let's talk about that Buick. It looks like you said it's a Buick that was found in Sibley County this morning. Dispatch call went out around 6 a.m. saying they believe they saw the suspect's car. Our Joe McCoy has been on the scene for hours. And Joe, when you first arrived on that scene, it was not cordoned off. It was not blocked off like it is now. Can you describe what you saw when you first arrived? I mean, you were able to walk right up to that cowboy hat.
Yep, exactly, Julie. When we first arrived, State Patrol was on scene, Sibley County Sheriffs were on scene, and there was a considerable law enforcement presence. But as you just mentioned, my photographer and I, we drove right up to the scene. We were able to take a picture of that cowboy hat. We were able to, see the car, shoot video of that black Buick. And so that all happened. And then I would say about 15 minutes later is when this perimeter was set that has seemed to only grow throughout the morning and early afternoon. We're now hearing that perimeter here on Highway 25 is 2 miles long. So that is an extremely large perimeter, Julie. Of course, law enforcement not allowing reporters or the public to get anywhere near what is going on in that scene. And I do have a kind of an interesting tidbit. I was just talking with some neighbors who live to the property directly next to the property that is being searched right now. I asked them, when did you first see that Buick arrive on scene? And the guy who I spoke with, he said that they did not see that Buick there last night. They first saw it this morning. I think he said it was around 7 o'clock. So when they got up and kind of were getting ready to go to church, they saw that black Buick. He did say, Julie, that a window was busted out of that black Buick, and it looked like in the front of the vehicle. So we're trying to put together this time frame from witnesses and people who live nearby and any word from law enforcement about when exactly that black Buick got there. And as Lou has been mentioning, we do not know if that black Buick is registered to that suspect, Vance Boelter in this case, but we do know from authorities that this is a car that is related to this investigation that they believe Boelter was driving. So I think Lou has been bringing up great questions that I've had as well of how Boelter got from Representative Hortman's home in Brooklyn Park and then got to Minneapolis. As Lou was mentioning, it certainly fits in a time frame where he could have walked that 7 miles. Did he potentially get in another car? Did he maybe Uber somewhere, to get to North Minneapolis? And then when he was in North Minneapolis and then ended up here in Green Isle, how did he get there? Was it all driven by this black Buick? Whose car is this? All of these questions that we still have, Julie. And the law enforcement presence here has not dwindled down at all. It's ratcheted up throughout the afternoon, and within the past hour or hour and a half, we haven't seen any more law enforcement, but there are multiple SWAT teams down there. There are multiple K9 units down there. There was at one time a bomb squad, but we did see that bomb squad leave the property. So that just gives everyone an idea of the police presence that we are seeing down here. And I did talk with one woman, Julie, she received a message from the BCA about 45 minutes ago saying, we are about to search your property. You need to leave your property. We're going to bring in, these tactical teams to search your property. So as of this moment, I can actually see the lady right there. She's still here. So I don't believe that she has gotten a message yet that she can then go back to her home. So this is the kind of impact this is having on this rural community in Green Isle. Not only have dozens of people driven by and asked us, hey, what's going on? Do you know if they've caught him yet? All those questions, a lot of curiosity. There's also, people's Sunday afternoons are being uprooted because they're being asked to leave their homes so tactical teams can come and search their property. That same woman that I talked to, I asked her to describe her feelings. She said simply disbelief of what is happening here. This is, of course, unprecedented here in Green Isle. She says she doesn't really feel scared anymore, but she did say last night she felt scared because she knew that suspect's property, Boelter's property that he owned here in Green Isle, was about 5 miles away. So, of course, this community here in Green Isle, which is less than 600 people, they are on edge about this suspect here in this case, potentially roaming around their community, someone that police has said you need to be cautious of. He could be armed and dangerous. And then this morning around 10:45, we received those emergency alerts that people need to stay inside their home, make sure to stay safe. So this community, of course, on edge as this scene, we have not had any signal yet that this scene is dying down at all. We still do not know yet if law enforcement is going to hold a press conference later this afternoon or later this evening. We have not been able to receive any word from law enforcement besides when we initially arrived on scene here at 8:45. And the only thing State Patrol told us at that time was that black Buick was a car of interest. So that it has now been confirmed that car was being driven by the suspect, Vance Boelter. But that's the only question we've been able to have answered from law enforcement here on the scene in Green Isle, Julie.
Oh, that's some really interesting new information, Joe. Thanks so much. That's some good reporting. That's interesting that front window was broken on the Buick. That's
what it looks like on the
yeah,
photo we're seeing, Joe.
yeah,
So that matches.
And then also that they are getting alerts to leave their homes so that they can be searched. That has got to be an alarming text to get. And it hadn't occurred to me that, of course, the people that live in Green Isle had a really long night last night and were scared because they know that home is so close to their properties. But it's such a small community, Joe. Have you come across anyone that knows Vance Boelter or his wife?
I have not, Julie. No, I have not, Julie. And even that neighbor that I was talking to who lives to the nearest property, to the property that they are searching, he, had no idea what was going on. That's the same neighbor that we've been running some sound from, where he said he heard a couple of what he believed to be gunshots last night. I do want to be clear, though, Julie, I just talked to that man again. It's his belief that those gunshots are unrelated to what is going on here. Of course, that is just, his thoughts. So, that is not any official word, but that is what that man says. But I have talked to numerous people here in the community, even people today in Green Isle and in the community as they've been driving by asking us questions. No one seems to know Vance Boelter or his wife, or have really ever interacted with him. I talked to a woman who works at a counter at the BP gas station in town. She's worked at that counter for many years. She said she saw the picture on the news of Boelter and never seen him before. His name didn't sound familiar. So it's interesting. And we also don't know how much time Vance Boelter spent here in Green Isle, because we know, as we've learned through our reporting, that he spent a couple of nights a week at that North Minneapolis home that he was renting out with his friends/roommates. So we don't know how much time he was spending in Minneapolis versus how much time he and his family were spending here in Green Isle. But yeah, I think that community aspect, Julie, in Green Isle is just another layer to this story, another community on edge. Of course, yesterday, Brooklyn Park was on edge because they had that shelter in place, for a lot of the afternoon. And now Green Isle, even though there wasn't an emergency alert last night or shelter in place, people are wondering, is this man potentially roaming our community? And if he is armed and dangerous, could we be in danger? So there's just so many layers, tragic layers, I should say, Julie, to this story.
Yeah, and it's interesting. The text that his roommate claimed came from him seemed very apologetic. and even said, I made some bad decisions. That's the way he paraphrased one of the texts to one of our reporters. And, you know, the best thing he could do right now is turn himself in so that people can once again rest easy. We sure hope that this comes to a conclusion soon. Lou, did you have any other questions for Joe?
I don't have a question for Joe, but I do have some more context involving the Buick, and good for Joe to listen in as well. So yesterday, you know, the authorities release information that they want the public to know for their own safety and to help them solve the crime. They hold back some information because it might not help if it goes public. And one bit of information I got yesterday is that he was thought to be driving a Buick. They didn't release that information, presumably because if he knows that they're looking for a Buick, it would just change cars,
Yeah.
and then they can't find him again. So when we heard last night that this Be on the Lookout in South Dakota went out for a Buick, it matched that information. I'm going to just read what information went out to South Dakota authorities. It said, be on the lookout for Minnesota license, then the plate number, for a maroon 2025 Buick four-door registered to another person. And it said that this other person may be traveling with the person involved in the homicide. And so that's what went out to law enforcement. From the picture, it appears to be black, but you know, it's hard to tell. And some details such as color are things that, you know, what I always call fog of war reporting, where, you know, the color might get reported differently than what it really is. So it's hard. It's, you know, we can only presume that it is the exact same car from what they were looking for last night that's registered to this other man's name. What we do know for sure is that authorities believe this is the vehicle that you're looking at right now that Vance Boelter, the shooting suspect, was driving.
Yeah, and interesting to note, when we first saw that image, it did look to me like that window was broken. Now we confirmed that that front window had been broken. And so just another piece of the puzzle that if he was in fact walking around in North Minneapolis trying to find a vehicle, perhaps this is one that he found.
And, you know, he and his wife bought that rural property there in Green Isle in 2023. So
Relatively recently.
They've only been there a couple of years. It's not out of the ordinary that people in town wouldn't know who he is.
Right. With 5 children though. And they seem to be, from the videos that he himself put out on social media, faith seemed to be a big part of their lives. As you know, you heard Joe saying the neighbor that saw that car sitting there at 7 a.m. getting up to go to church, you just wonder, were they members of any kind of congregations? Even if they've been there, if they've been there for a year and a half or 2 years, it's still a large family to move into a small area. So lots of unanswered questions for sure. But as Joe mentioned, you know, that community in Green Isle, there's a lot of fear last night because they knew he had a property nearby and that he was still on the loose. You know, and in Brooklyn Park and in Champlin, of course, a lot of fear yesterday as well. We talked to neighbors about what they saw and experienced as yesterday's events unfolded. Here's Ian Russell.
In the wake of tragedy,
it was pretty intense. Yeah, pretty scary.
Compassion remains.
Like, know the Hoffmans. Like, they give king size or full size candy bars out at Halloween. Yeah, like, they're real nice personnel.
An early morning attack in Champlin.
I can think like pop, 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 right? For sure 3.
Shaking the neighbors of State Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette.
I mean, things can happen anywhere, but when it's just literally that close to home, it's kind of nerve-wracking a little bit.
Police say 57-year-old Vance Boelter started his attacks on lawmakers at the Hoffman home, disguised as law enforcement.
I just saw it. It looked like a police car.
Just a few miles away in Brooklyn Park.
It's hard to see today.
Actual police took that car, left after Boelter shot and killed Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband, Mark.
Yeah, we got to know each other, you know, really well over the last few years. You know, so this is definitely heartbreaking.
Here, though, it was never Representative, only Melissa and Mark.
We never talked politics. We just talked about our dogs and the weather and how things were in the neighborhood.
Corey Leaf says he'll miss that.
Happy. And that's how we always thought of them.
In the wake of tragedy, compassion holds on tight.
Devastating. It's wrong. It shouldn't have happened.
Even as pain stays close by.
I want people to remember them just as great people, not as a Democrat or not as a Republican. Just they were great people.
Ian Russell.
A big devastating loss.
KARE 11 News.
You're hearing from neighbors and people that knew Melissa Hortman not as the powerhouse DFL lawmaker and leader that she was, but just as a friend and a neighbor. She had been the top Democratic leader in the state house since 2017. And if you may recall, she led Democrats in that 3-week walkout at the beginning of this year's very contentious session when the House came in evenly divided. She ended up being the person at the helm of her party to try to figure out how to lead with the Republicans in an evenly divided House. They ended up coming up with a power sharing agreement, and she turned the gavel over to Representative Lisa Demuth, and she assumed the title Speaker Emerita. Hortman used her position as Speaker in 2023 to champion expanded protections for abortion rights, including legislation to solidify Minnesota's status as a refuge for patients or for people who lived in more restrictive states. They could then travel here to Minnesota to get an abortion. And she also was instrumental in protecting the providers of abortion in the state. Senator John Hoffman was 60 years old. He was first elected in 2012 as chair of the Senate and was chair of the Senate Human Services Committee. That oversees one of the biggest parts of the state budget. He and his wife, Yvette, have one daughter. Her name is Hope. She came out of that shooting unscathed because of her mother, Yvette, who we understand threw herself on top of her daughter to protect her. Both Senator Hoffman and his wife sustained multiple gunshot injuries. We know they did already come out of surgery last night. Last night, we were told Senator Hoffman was in a wait-and-see situation. His wife, Yvette, this morning updating, saying that he is doing okay, still has a long road ahead of him. Fortunately, all those bullets for both the senator and his wife missed major organs. But as you can imagine, if you're shot 8 or 9 times, it's a long road of recovery ahead. So our thoughts and prayers are with them this morning as they recover in the hospital. And
So
you're working on some breaking
I
news.
do
it
have
looks like.
a bit of breaking news, kind of related but tangential to this entire story. So the trial of State Senator Nicole Mitchell was set to get underway tomorrow with jury selection up in Detroit Lakes in Becker County.
Oh, wow.
Of course, that's the high-profile burglary case where she's accused of breaking into her stepmother,
Her stepmother's home.
her stepmother's home.
After her father had passed away. So
What
Senator
we
Mitchell's
know- yeah.
father had died, and it's the understanding she was breaking in because she was saying her stepmother wouldn't turn over some sentimental items for her.
Yeah.
She's accused of breaking in. She says she was going to check on her stepmother, who she said has Alzheimer's.
And so as of right now, the jury selection is not going to start tomorrow as planned. And we expect to learn more shortly or possibly tomorrow as far as how long it's going to be postponed. But it's because of the assassination.
Because emotions are so high and people are maybe thinking it's not the right state of mind for potential jurors to be in.
We don't have the rationale, but just because of the shootings, they are at least postponing it. It's not going to start tomorrow.
All right. Let's go out to Ian Russell. He is live in Sibley County for us with some new information. Ian?
Hey, Julie and Lou. Yeah, we're on 301st right now. We are north of State Highway 25 here. You should be looking at a shot right now. It's about as close as we can get. Probably about 3/4 of a mile to a mile here. They have a car open on just because of the distance. I'm not entirely sure if it's the Buick we've been talking about or what, but there's a lot of law enforcement, I believe you can see there, kind of taking a look at some things. On the left side of your screen, if I'm kind of painting the picture in my mind here, I walked away from the camera because there's a lot of folks over here kind of looking at this same scene. There were some officers, some law enforcement, looked like a K-9 unit kind of walking through what I believe is a soybean field, kind of on the left side there. And, you know, like I said, this is pretty far down the road. That's you should be looking at all the way down there at the back end should be State Highway 25, which is kind of in the middle section of where Joe has been. And when we were on the sort of that western edge earlier in the afternoon, that's kind of where things have been concentrated. But as you can see, just a lot of law enforcement down there kind of taking a look at that car. I believe from here, looks like it has all of its doors open. Some folks are still kind of poking around out there, but this is kind of the first time we've been able to see here kind of what's going on in this middle section on 25. Lou, I think you had said it was about 2 miles of 25 that's closed off here. So this is sort of that first look into that middle section where a lot of that activity, I believe, has been concentrated. Obviously, we've seen some folks kind of on that western edge with some state patrol officers going through, checking on things, checking on houses, things like that. But like I said, we're on 301st right now, looking down towards where that car is and sort of getting our first look at what that looks like.
Okay. And Ian, this is Lou. Thanks for your reporting. That's great information there. So the spot where you're looking south on 301, is that correct?
Yes, we are just north. If I get my directions here right, I believe we're just north of it. I'd say
Yes.
probably.
And so
Three-quarters of a
for your
mile.
reference, the road is blocked 1 mile in each direction of that spot. So that is the center of where the road is blocked off. And if that indeed is the Buick that they are now opening up and searching, it could be because they needed that time to get a judge to write a search warrant and for a judge to approve a search warrant before they go in. And so, everything there would seem to make sense. And that you're right, that looks exactly like the center of the investigation right now as we see it.
Yeah, and you can see.
And I'm sorry, like you said, I mean, it's far, right? It's far down the road, so it is difficult to tell what that is, but it looks like a dark colored sedan style vehicle that we can see on that right side of the road with the doors open over there.
Yeah, and you can see officers, and it looks like some canine units coming out of that field that is to the left of the car. And this is all happening right now, live as we speak. We know as they're searching the car, they're also going to the property owners in the area. They're searching all of their homes as well. Small community, but man, lots of farmland, lots of forest to work through in that area while searching for him. Lou had brought up the point that they are likely also activating drones, that you can do a heat-seeking drone that would show if there's a person or an animal on the ground, as well as drones that just have cameras. So sure, they're using every means available to find this 57-year-old Vance Boelter, who owns a property a few miles from where they found that Buick today. And Lou had done some reporting on the fact that the BOLO went out last night to officers in South Dakota, be on the lookout for a Buick. And obviously they believe that is the suspect's car that they appear to be searching right now.
And just for location, for people to understand where this is essentially right in between Belle Plaine and Green Isle. People might be more familiar with Belle Plaine because it's right on Highway 169, southwest of the Twin Cities. If you head straight west from there on Highway 25, as Ian mentioned, you would run into this spot that we're looking at right now. And just a couple miles to the west from there is Green Isle, where the suspect owns a home. So interesting development ongoing right now as they begin to search that vehicle. And as you can see on the video, the field right next to the vehicle as well.
All right, Ian, thanks so much. We appreciate all the new information. Let us know if you get any more information or scenes that we should take live and share with our viewers. We appreciate it. All this happening, of course, because 57-year-old Vance Boelter is believed to have shot and killed Representative Hortman, the Speaker Emerita in the Minnesota House, and her husband, Mark. And that search remains ongoing. The political, emotional, I would say feelings from this are reverberating not just around the state, but around the country as well. And we know there is a growing memorial to Representative Hortman at the state capitol. As we've mentioned many times, she served this state for 20 years. Our Jessica Hart is live outside the state capitol with more on the scene there. Jessica?
Julie, it's very quiet here. It's been quiet for the past 3 hours that we've been out here. It's just been a steady stream of people stopping by, laying down flowers and paying their respects throughout the day. But we can take you a little bit closer here to the memorial and what's been really kind of growing over the past few times here. You can come over here, Ethan, and kind of just show some of the different flowers and notes here. There's actually a stack of Post-it notes that was left out here, and people have just been coming and writing little messages on them and just leaving the Post-it notes next to all of these flowers and the candles. And you can just see all the various signs. You see rest in peace, Melissa Hortman, rest in power, Melissa Hortman. And there's also a few American flags here. A lot of people told me they brought those because they wanted to show that she was a state representative, and they wanted to pay their respects and believe that a flag should be here along with her photo. So just a steady stream of people coming throughout the day. It's been very quiet. At moments, people have gotten really just emotional when they walk up. You know, we were talking with one woman, Shaletta Brundage, who's well known in the community. She said, I was not planning on crying today, but then I came over here and I saw the memorial, and she just simply just broke down. And so just seeing this site here has really just a lot of people emotional. And then over here, there's also too an art installation that was done here by Joe Geary. He is a leader in the Ojibwe community, and he said it was really important to him to do something almost immediately after he learned what had happened. And he's actually right over here right now. Hi, Joe. How you doing? Doing well. Thank you. I mean, appreciate you being willing to talk with us. Can you just walk us through What did you create here for Melissa and John?
These are the Dreamcatcher teardrop dream catchers, and they're dream catchers of life. And it's to honor the fallen and injured people and to bring Minnesota together. And certainly people have come here all day, it looks like, to reflect and share stories and doing what it was supposed to be doing. So it really has been able to give people an opportunity to heal.
Yeah, I know you mentioned healing is important, and how do you hope this can help people kind of move forward but not forget what happened?
Just sitting here, listening to the stories and hearing people stop by, just to share that connection and sharing the just the happiness of being together, and having someplace to go and have something to actually touch and feel and to be part of. So I'm glad I'm able to do my little bit to bring maybe love and health and respect and happiness, and as the Dreamcatcher says, family, all Minnesota.
Well, Joe, thank you for talking with us. I appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So as I mentioned, Julie, just a steady stream of people. There's a couple more people who are laying down some flowers over here. Just a pretty quiet and at times really somber scene. So we'll send it back to you.
All right, it's just moving how much people want to show the family and fellow Minnesotans that they care. We appreciate it. Thanks so much, Jessica. We know, of course, that yesterday there were posts on social media from President Trump, former President Joe Biden, former Governor Tim Pawlenty. Really, the entire country was thinking about Minnesota and the families of those lawmakers, and a lot of prayers going up and a lot of wishes that we can tone down the political rhetoric, because clearly this was something that was just brutal and a nightmare that unfolded overnight last night or 2 nights ago here in Minnesota. We haven't received any updates from authorities today. Of course, we heard on scanners around 6 a.m. on police scanners that they had located a vehicle that they believed was a suspect's vehicle. Let's take a live look right now at that Buick that they found on Highway 25 near Green Isle. Lou made a great observation that for a long time that Buick just seemed to be, for hours, it was just on the side of the road. You could see that the front window had been busted out. Joe McCoy told us when he first arrived on the scene around 8:45 this morning, they were able to get very close to that area and even go right up to a picture of a cowboy hat that was on the side of the road. Looked like the same cowboy hat that Vance Boelter was wearing in a surveillance picture that we assume was taken from a bank in Minneapolis where he withdrew cash after these shootings. So you can see how close Joe was able to get earlier this morning. And there's that Buick that clearly has the front window busted out. And now we know, hours later, police came back to that car and were searching it. Likely, as Joe pointed out, they had to wait to get a search warrant from a judge before they could enter that vehicle. Doesn't look like they're in that field anymore, but a few minutes ago, you could see a lot of officers, including canines, in that field searching. And there's a large area right now they're searching, including every residence in Green Isle, population a little less than 600, where a few miles from this scene, Vance Boelter is known to own a home. And so we're just watching this unfold as you are, without any updates or word of updates from law enforcement coming in yet.
We also had some recent drone video, if we are able to show that, which gives you an idea of the landscape there, as well as just the rural nature of it, but several groves of trees, which would be very time consuming to safely go through all of those, in addition to all the homes and the outbuildings.
That's what I was thinking too, Lou. In areas like this, there are so many sheds and barns and outbuildings that they will need to be checking.
And think about, we've covered in the past, like a missing persons case where there's these widespread searches where they can go as fast as they can because there's not that imminent danger that they face if they come upon, when they're looking for a victim is so much different than looking for a suspect.
Who is known to open fire on law enforcement, and clearly others as well. But it is stunning that when he was confronted with officers in Brooklyn Park at Representative Hortman's home, he exchanged fire with them. So obviously they want to find him as quickly as possible, but it's a very dangerous situation for them.
Another thing that we don't know is what he may have on him as far as weapons, because I have some information that there was weapons found in his vehicle that was left behind in Brooklyn Park. We don't know what he had remaining on him as far as weapons and ammunition.
Yeah, and I know that Drew Evans, the head of the BCA yesterday, when he was describing what Vance Boelter looked like and what he was wearing, he did say he was carrying a black bag with him at the time. They knew that he was wearing a light blue shirt. He had on a tactical vest, and I believe it was light colored pants, and he was carrying a dark colored bag. So
I mean, it's concerning how far he's been able to travel over the last 24 hours, because as it started out, the search began with a search of the golf course up there.
3 miles
surrounding
around
Representative
Edinburgh.
Hortman's home. And, there's a difference between looking for somebody who ran into the woods and is hiding in a golf course versus somebody that reached a vehicle, was able to access money, and then has traveled many miles to get back down to an hour away from the Twin Cities to this area where he lives.
It is pretty remarkable. And even in those pictures that were taken, obviously we have no idea what his state of mind was, but he looks fairly casual, just walking up to what we believe is the bank to get money out after those shootings. Let's listen in on what Drew Evans from the BCA had to say about the suspect yesterday.
Today we are asking for the public's help at this point in time in locating Vance Luther Boelter, who is a 57-year-old white male who's 6 feet 1 inches tall, 220 pounds, with brown hair and brown eyes. I know this name has been reported in the media so far, and we are confirming as a person of interest that we are looking to locate in relation to this. At this time, we would ask the public, if you do locate him or see him, to call 911. Do not approach him. You should consider him armed and dangerous, and you should call 911 immediately with the information. He was seen this morning wearing light-colored cowboy hat that you can see up here in the clothing there, with dark-colored long-sleeve collared shirt or coat, light pants, and carrying a dark bag. If you have any tips about the whereabouts or any information that would be helpful, you can call local police department, or you can call our BCA tip line at 877-996-6222, or email us at bca.tips@state.mn.us. We still don't know if additional people are involved, but this individual is the one that we're looking as a person of interest right now, but there may be other people with him, and we would like to speak to anybody that may have had contact with him at any point in time. So please connect with us, even if this has been some time ago today, so that we can follow up and continue to work together to keep our communities safe.
All right, that was Drew Evans, the head of the BCA yesterday. It's our understanding they're leading this investigation. He mentioned there that they're speaking to persons of interest. One of those, we presume, is Jenny.
That would be his wife.
Boelter, who is his wife. And
we don't know the level of
that.
cooperation. So as far as we know that they have spoken to her, I don't
She would obviously be a person of interest if she's married to him. Let's just say that. Doesn't mean she's culpable of anything.
Right.
It just means she knows him very well and might have information on his whereabouts.
And I have confirmed that there was some text messages, some communication that lead them to need to investigate whether or not she knew anything prior to what he did, or if she talked to him afterwards and learned what he did. And so that's all part of it right now. She has not been arrested. And as far as I know, I guess I should say, I don't know how thorough of interrogation / interviews she's given with law enforcement.
You just learned that she was at a gas station
in Onamia, which is north of the Twin Cities in Mille Lacs County. She had other relatives in the car, and she was stopped. And there's been reporting that we've read online. I don't know if rumors or reporting is the right way to state it, about some items that were in the car that were concerning about potentially trying to escape, but we don't have any of that
confirmation
confirmed.
of that items were ever found, or we just know that she was questioned by police at some point. And you actually were calling her yesterday, and it was going to voicemail, and she picked up today.
Today she answered, and then once I identified myself, then she hung up. But that also confirms that she's currently not in custody.
All right, let's see if we can go back to those pictures of the car that they found that was being searched. Doors have been left open, but it used to be surrounded by officers. Clearly not anymore. This is an active scene. Homes in Green Isle are being searched home by home. We're assuming outbuildings and sheds and all those things are being searched right now, as law enforcement continues to look for 57-year-old Vance Boelter, who they believe committed a politically motivated assassination of Melissa Hortman and her wife or her husband Mark, as well as multiple shots fired into both Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette. So we're continuing to watch the scene, and we will be back with updates. But we are going to right now leave you with this live picture for a moment, and we will be back with more coverage of this manhunt shortly.
Now, breaking news from KARE 11.
Good afternoon. I'm Julie Nelson along with Lou Ragoose. We are breaking into coverage to bring you the latest on a massive manhunt happening as we speak in Sibley County for 57-year-old Vance Boelter. He is the man police believe carried out a political assassination, the murder of Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband. Right now, there is a massive police presence in Sibley County near Green Isle, a small town about an hour southwest of the Twin Cities, where authorities believe they have found the vehicle that Vance Boelter was using overnight. It is a Buick. It had a bolo out for this Buick overnight last night. It has been found. Let's take a live picture of the scene on Highway 25 in Sibley County, a few miles from the home that is owned by Vance Boelter in Green Isle. We've been watching this scene unfold all morning. Recently, there were several law enforcement officers. The doors of that Buick were open. Officers were searching that field and clearly also searching the car as well.
And the discovery of this Buick is especially interesting because it aligns with details that we first learned yesterday. I was able to confirm yesterday that Boelter was believed to be driving in a Buick at some point after he escaped the shooting scene in Brooklyn Park. And yesterday, late afternoon, early evening, authorities in Minnesota transferred or passed along information to South Dakota authorities, giving them a specific license plate and description of a Buick that Boelter may be traveling in. Now, that information passed along to South Dakota, but then early this morning, at some point around 7 a.m. or so, this Buick was discovered there. This location is essentially halfway between Green Isle and Belle Plaine. It's about 5 miles from Green Isle, about 6 miles from Belle Plaine, and that's where reporter Ian Russell is right now. He's joining us live over the phone. Ian, tell us what you've been able to see over the course of the last couple of hours here from your standpoint.
Yeah, so this is kind of the first time we've been able to come to this side. When we came in here earlier this afternoon, there was another state patrol officer who kind of snaked back and forth across the road, blocking us off. So went to the west end of this sort of scene in this mile on each side here of State Highway 25. Now, though, we're on 301st, and what you're looking at is what we've been talking about, is that dark-colored sedan. I will admit it is hard to tell from here. We are zoomed all the way in to be able to see that vehicle and some of what's going on down that way. Probably about 15, 20 minutes ago or so, we saw some law enforcement officers kind of walking through that field on the left side of your screen. I've not been able to see them. I'm not entirely sure if they've gone back towards the road, which in that the backside there is State Highway 25, or if they're in that sort of grove of trees that I think you can see to the left side of the screen. Not entirely sure where they are right now, but it looks like from our vantage point, the doors of that sedan have been closed now. And this has kind of been, like you said, Lou, sort of the middle point between Belle Plaine and Green Isle. And obviously the middle point of this scene here was sort of a mile on each side, kind of shut down as they keep looking for Vance Boelter.
All right, Ian, we know that you'll stay on that scene for us and continue watching that vehicle. Again, we believe authorities realized it was there at about 6 or 7 o'clock this morning. Our Joe McCoy is also in the same area and has been on the scene for hours. In fact, he arrived when you could still get fairly close to that vehicle. We know there's a picture that's been circulating on social media of the cowboy hat they believe Vance Boelter was wearing yesterday. You said, Joe, that was about 200 yards from that Buick. That's front window was smashed out as well. And I know you talked to some residents in that area. They're still under an emergency alert to stay in their homes and lock the door. And authorities are going house to house, searching those homes. What details can you give us on that, Joe?
Yeah, Julie, presumably that emergency alert is still in place. I just spoke with a woman who about an hour and 15 minutes ago received a text from the BCA that she needed to leave her property because tactical teams were about to be searching her property. I just spoke with her a few minutes ago to ask her, hey, have you received a message that you can go back to her home? She has not received said message. So she is still just standing out here with her husband, along with all of the media that is here and other onlookers, waiting to go back into her home, a Sunday afternoon that has been totally uprooted for her. And I want to kind of backtrack, Julie, as you were telling viewers about exactly what has been happening throughout the afternoon. So this morning at 8:45, my photographer and I arrived on scene here. And as you mentioned, Julie, there was a large police presence, but we were able to come right up to the scene. And that picture on social media, I took that picture. I came up to the scene, that cowboy hat that it has not been confirmed if that is Vance Boelter's cowboy hat. I want to make that very clear, but it does look incredibly similar to the one that he was wearing in those pictures that were captured by security cameras. But we came up to the scene. I took that picture of the cowboy hat about 100 to 200 yards away from that black Buick that was also there that had its front window busted out. And then about 15 minutes later, that's when law enforcement and State Patrol set this large perimeter, and we were told to back up and move away from the scene. Since that point, around 9 a.m., things have just escalated in terms of the law enforcement presence that we have seen here today throughout the morning and now into the afternoon. Julie, I want to just go through the list. We've seen multiple canine units. We've seen multiple SWAT teams here on scene. We saw a skid loader with the South Metro SWAT unit. At one point, there was a bomb squad on scene. That bomb squad did leave the property. So that just gives viewers an idea of exactly the law enforcement presence that is here in Green Isle. And I want to let everyone know that this town of Green Isle is less than 600 people. This is an incredibly rural community. The home, the property that Vance Boelter owned with his wife, his family, is about 5 miles away from where we are right now. And I was talking with some of the residents, just asking them, you know, what are your thoughts? What are you thinking right now? One of them said, it's unbelievable what is going on. This is, of course, unprecedented. But she also said that last night she was scared, because they didn't know if Vance Boelter, who they know owned a home in their in their community, if he was out on the loose, you know, or we knew he was out, but they didn't know if he was in Green Isle. Law enforcement was telling people that Vance Boelter could be armed and dangerous, to not approach him, call 911 if you see him. So you can imagine the thoughts that people here in rural Green Isle were thinking last night and into this morning. And then, as you mentioned, Julie, this morning is when that black Buick was discovered on that property that law enforcement have been searching throughout the entire day now. We do not know who owns the property back there that they are searching, but law enforcement searching that property, and then tactical teams are going to homes in the area to also search for them. So I want to be very clear to our viewers, we do not know if Vance Boelter is in Green Isle, is located, you know, is somewhere where authorities are searching. We do not know exactly what they're looking for, but this scene has just been, you know, continued to develop throughout the afternoon. And we still are waiting from any sort of official word from authorities about what exactly is going on back there. We have not been able to talk to any authorities. They have not given us a time of when potentially there may be a press conference out here in Green Isle. So we've just been going off of what we've been seeing, and then also what some of these neighbors and community members have been telling us, Julie.
Good information, Joe, especially the perspectives of those neighbors there. And it's important to note again that Vance Boelter has not been found one way or another. It's a very valid fear that all these neighbors have. Can you specify that Buick and that cowboy hat, they were not there last night, but they were there this morning?
Well, that is according to a neighbor, Lou. So that is not something we have heard from police. I was talking to the neighbor that lives to the closest property to the property that is being searched. I asked him, I said, when did you first see this Buick? He said someone who lives with him came home late last night. They did not see a black Buick, but then when they woke up this morning, kind of 7, they were getting ready to go to church. That is when they saw that black Buick. And as Julie mentioned, that kind of fits with the timeline of when law enforcement first discovered that black Buick. And trying to piece together some sort of timeline of when that black Buick got here and that hat got here.
All right, thanks, Joe, for that. And one other point to note is we confirmed that there was a neighbor that reported hearing gunshots overnight. Can you share what you were able to hear on that note, and if there's been any further discussion about the possibility of gunshots in that area overnight?
Yep. So I talked with that neighbor again, who we had on camera, saying he heard a couple of gunshots. His opinion, again, I want to make sure it's very clear. This is not from officials. This is from this neighbor. His opinion is that those gunshots were not related to what is going on here. We, of course, have no confirmed information about that. He said that one of his neighbors does some target practice, so he thought it could have been that. He just says that, you know, he was awake. He was kind of having trouble sleeping. He heard a couple of gunshots around 2 a.m. His thoughts and feelings are that it's unrelated to what's going on, but that, of course, is not confirmed information, Lou.
All right. We appreciate the update. Thanks so much. We know you'll be standing by, Joe, with any developments. And as Joe mentioned, we have not heard anything officially from law enforcement sources today, but we do understand that they will be holding a press conference coming up at 5:30. We have our Morgan Wolf live at the command center for the emergency operations. That's where they held the press conference yesterday with all the heads of the law enforcement agencies. Have you heard anything, Morgan?
Hey, Julie. Well, just within the last 30 minutes, we got that update that they will be having that press conference at 5:30, and it will be with leaders from the BCA and the Department of Public Safety. Actually, the commissioner will be speaking. And so we weren't given details on exactly what they will be discussing with us, but we do know that there is a certain level of concern about misinformation that is being shared on channels such as social media and whatnot. So these investigators, they just want to make sure that they are relaying the facts to the public. And that is where we come in as well. This is going to be the central point for the communications from investigators. We are not going to be anticipating any impromptu press conferences out in the field at the very different locations that they have their teams at working on this investigation and the manhunt. So you can anticipate that all of the official information from the BCA and state leaders will be coming from exactly this location here at the State Emergency Operations Center. Governor Walz did activate this center yesterday, and it plays a role not only in gathering all of the communication and streamlining it to the media and the public, but it also is a way for all of the different agencies that are involved across the state to work with one another. And then they have, of course, that more open communication line. And that's exactly what we've been seeing. Right now, I can tell you that we have leaders from the communication teams from DPS and the BCA here right now, and they are standing by getting all of their information ready for that 5:30 press conference. If it was urgent, I will say that we would not be waiting a few hours for that press conference. So at this point, I think they're just going to give us some updates on what they've been gathering with the manhunt so far.
All right, we appreciate that. Thanks so much, Morgan. We know there's a lot of misinformation, rumors, and information flying around on social media. So hopefully law enforcement will be able to clear up some of that information for us coming up in a couple hours. Thank you so much. We don't want to forget, in the midst of all this, while they look for this clearly very dangerous man, the people that we've lost and who've been affected. We, of course, lost one of the top Democratic leaders in our state. We lost 55-year-old Representative Melissa Hortman. She had been a top Democratic leader in the State House since 2017. She led Democrats in that 3-week walkout at the beginning of this year's session in a power struggle with Republicans. And she came to that power sharing agreement. She turned over the gavel to Republican Representative Lisa Damuth and assumed the title Speaker Emerita. Hortman used her position as Speaker in 2023 to fight for expanded protection for abortion rights, including legislation to solidify Minnesota's status as a refuge for patients from restrictive states so they could travel here to get an abortion. She also worked on legislation to protect the providers who provide them. She was 60 years old, first elected in 2012, or she was not 66 years old. She and her husband were both shot and killed in their homes in Brooklyn Park 2 nights ago when the suspect, who police believe was Vance Boelter, broke in and shot them multiple times. He was dressed as a law enforcement officer, clearly impersonating an officer, before he had come to their home after breaking in to Senator John Hoffman's home. He and his wife, Yvette, were home with their young daughter in her mid-20s, Hope. Senator Hoffman and his wife were both shot multiple times. Both did survive and are out of surgery, but have a long road ahead of them. Senator Hoffman is 60 years old, and he was first elected in 2012. He is the chairman of the Senate Human Services Committee, which oversees one of the biggest parts of the state budget. As we mentioned, they have a daughter, Hope. And everyone around the state, we know, is pulling for them. A lot of prayers going up for them that they both make a full recovery. We did have an update this morning that Yvette Hoffman was alert and able to answer questions, and they both are on a road to recovery, but it's going to be a long road, having been shot 8 or 9 times. Miraculously, neither one of them had any major organs hit in that shooting, but police responded to their home in Champlin and then proactively decided about an hour and a half later, they made their way over to Representative Hortman's home. And that is where they found, very sadly, that she and her husband had truly just been executed in their homes.
And with the reporting that we've done over the last 2 days here, we've gotten kind of an idea of the movements of the suspects, the suspect, that is, after these shootings took place. That first shooting taking place at about 2 a.m. in Champlin. And as you mentioned, officers proactively went to the home of Representative Melissa Hortman in Brooklyn Park to check on their safety there. That's where an officer encountered the suspect coming out of the house. The suspect shot at the officer returned fire, and at that point, the suspect was able to get away out of the back of the house. From there, we don't know what happened with the suspect other than that by 6 a.m., he was able to return to what I describe as a crash pad, a house that he rented a room to stay at sometimes in North Minneapolis with one of his best lifelong friends.
Yeah, that he'd known since 4th grade, apparently, a roommate that rented him a room in that house in North Minneapolis.
And that man believes that Boelter was there at about 6 a.m. From there, we have those surveillance videos that we've shown where he's wearing a cowboy hat and appears to be a fresh change of clothes.
And the FBI did release that picture. That's the one you've seen of him in his cowboy hat. We believe that picture was taken outside of a bank where he went to get money out
A
after
source
the
confirmed
shootings.
to me that he withdrew money from a bank at some point after the shootings and that he was driving a Buick. That information about the Buick was not public at that time until later on yesterday. The FBI released those photos at about 3 p.m. Here he is with the cowboy hat and the change of clothes at some point in Minneapolis yesterday. And later on in the evening, there apparently was information that he may have been headed towards South Dakota. Authorities reached out to South Dakota authorities with a be on the lookout and included information about a Buick that he was either driving or riding in at that time. And then fast forward from that point to this morning by 6 or 7 a.m., that very cowboy, it appears to be the exact same cowboy hat, the same band that goes around the brim, lying on the road about 5 miles from his home in Green Isle, which is Sibley County, about an hour southwest of the Twin Cities. So that would indicate that at some point during the night, he made it down there close to where he lived, and he apparently ditched the Buick that he was in. The alert that went out to neighbors was that it's believed that the suspect left his vehicle, the one that he was driving, and then of course the cowboy hat was found nearby.
This is some drone video we took of that area earlier today. And all morning long through the afternoon, just more and more law enforcement and different kinds of tactical vehicles have been entering that area. But as we reported earlier, you can see officers approaching a property in that area. They have been alerting homeowners ahead of time. We're going to come in. We want to search your home. And they're searching, obviously, all the outbuildings. It's a vast area that they're trying to find the suspect. And of course, as we noted, he did open fire on officers. So this is a man armed and dangerous. And Lou had noted earlier in our coverage, this is very different than looking for a missing person. When you're looking for someone you know has the mindset and ability to open fire and injure officers, they have to be incredibly careful in the search that they are conducting. But we were talking earlier about how he went from Brooklyn Park to that home in North Minneapolis. And it would have made sense if he did indeed walk that distance. He easily could have done it between those two
the
time
timing would
frames.
almost fit perfectly, in fact, if he did walk. Of course, we haven't heard any information if anybody gave him a ride or if he took a ride share or anything like that, but he wouldn't need to necessarily
He
to
could
get
have
back to
walked
the
there.
Minneapolis house.
And then again, we know that this Buick was registered to another man. There's another name involved, but we have no idea if this car was stolen, given to him voluntarily. And we do want to note that the front window of the Buick was crashed and smashed in. And we could see that clearly on the scene this morning, that front window is no longer there. And that car was just parked right on the side of Highway 25. And we also know that yesterday in the BCA's press conference, one of their updates, they said we are talking to people of interest. One of the people that they clearly would want to talk to is Vance's wife, Jenny. He was married, has a wife, Jenny. They also have 5 children. And Lou, through your reporting, you learned more about how and when they did question Jenny Boelter yesterday.
So early in the investigation, they somehow became aware of communication between Boelter and his wife. Whether she responded or not, we don't know, but that he had sent some text messages that they wanted to learn more about. And at the time that Governor Walz broke the horrible news at the press conference that Representative Hortman had been killed, at that time, they may have had contact with her, but they hadn't gotten to her yet.
Mhm.
Shortly after that, in between 10 and 11:30 a.m. in Onamia, which is in Mille Lacs County, north of the Twin Cities, she was stopped by law enforcement officers there at a gas station, and they talked with her there. We don't know much more than that at that point, but they were concerned about the possibility of her potentially helping them. That's all part of the investigation, or whether she knew anything prior to that, or if they had any sort of plans together after the fact. Those are all key elements that they continue to look in. She was not arrested, taken into custody and charged or anything like that. She was allowed to leave. And then today I was able to reach her on the phone. And once I identified myself, she hung up. But that again confirms that she's not in custody.
Well, we know that there are a lot of rumors floating around on social media about what officers found when they stopped Jenny Boelter and questioned her. We have not been able to confirm any of that independently, and we just want you to know we are working on it. Of course, we see the same rumors that you do on our social media feeds, but we haven't been able to confirm what may or may not have been in the car with her. And again, we don't believe that she is in custody at this time, but that she was questioned by police. All right, we want to, again, keep the victims in all of this front and center. And we know that emotions have been high across the state and across the country. Condolences have been pouring in on social media from President Trump, former President Biden, our former Governor Tim Pawlenty here in the state. And at the state capitol now, there is a growing memorial in honor of Speaker Emerita Melissa Hortman. We have our Jessica Hart there live. Let's go to her now and what are you seeing out there today, Jessica?
Yeah, Julie, people have been trickling in and out all day. We have a few people kind of just standing here behind me, just taking it all in as they look at this memorial. And it's been really emotional here. You know, people walk up here and you can see the tears starting to form in their eyes. And then once they look here and they see all of the tributes and the flowers and the American flags and the signs that people have left, it just hits them that she and her husband are both truly gone. Now, people have been telling me all day they felt compelled to come here because they feel like they need to pay their respects and honor the service that Melissa has done for this state. And so it's just been a very somber day here. It's been very quiet. Not too many people are talking to each other. There's been several hugs also throughout, even between strangers, people who don't know each other. I've seen just kind of go over to each other and embrace each other. And that's something else that people have talked to me about today, just the importance of being here with the community and being surrounded by other people as the state grieves this loss. And so you can see there's a woman here coming to place a sign. It says, "In honor of our beloved Melissa," and it's embroidered in blue with some blue stars. She also is holding an American flag. We've seen several people bring flags along with candles here to kind of place in that flower bed that was already here at the state capitol, but then also to put in their own flower planters. And then someone actually left a box of Post-it notes and a pen. And what people have been doing all day is they've been leaving notes and messages to Melissa, thanking her for her service and just talking about what an incredible leader and speaker she was and how deeply she will be missed. And it's just a really emotional scene, as you can see a few people here just embracing each other. And that woman is placing that flag right next to that sign she brought. So just dozens of people have been in and out all day. There doesn't seem to be like a point of time where there's just been a group of people. It's just whenever people have felt compelled to come to the site. Some people were just out walking and they stopped by and they wanted to pay their respects and just stand in a moment of silence. There's been a lot of just taking and reflecting on this memorial here today. And there's just several signs too as well, like "Rest in peace, Melissa Hortman, rest in power." Just a very emotional time here at the Capitol as people remember and honor Representative Hortman. Back to you.
All right. Thanks so much, Jessica. We appreciate your coverage today. And we're going to head back out now to that scene in Sibley County. As we do, we want to let you know we are breaking in during the rain delay. We are watching the U.S. Open. And when play continues, even possibly before that, but when play continues, we will bring it back to coverage of the U.S. Open. Right now, we're very aware it's in a rain delay, and that's why we're coming to you live here on KARE 11. But let's head back out to Sibley County, and you can see now that what we believe is a suspect's vehicle, and clearly authorities believe is his vehicle, looks like it is being towed away from the scene. Our Ian Russell is standing by there live and has been watching this scene unfold. Ian, take us through when you first saw officers approach that vehicle, what it appeared they were doing and looking for, and what that scene looked like. Just, I would say, what was it, about 45 minutes ago when officers began searching?
Yeah, just about. We've been here now, like you said, about 45 minutes or so. When we got here, the doors of that black sedan or that dark colored sedan were fully open. There were some law enforcement officers kind of walking through that field on the left side of the screen here. And we haven't been able to see them really for a while. There's been a couple unmarked vehicles kind of come up and down. This is 301st Avenue. You're looking down right now, or 301st. And this is kind of where they've been kind of coming up and down here. This tow truck here that you can see now with the lights on it, that's been here pretty quickly. I'd say within the last 3 to 4 minutes, it's kind of came down Highway 25, State Highway 25, which is in the very back where you see kind of that white SUV and some other cars on the backside there. That tow truck came along that road, came down 301st here and turned around. And it looks like, I mean, even as zoomed in as we are from where I can see, we're about 3/4 of a mile or so down the road here. It looks like that dark colored sedan may already be up on that vehicle, so or up on the tow truck there. So pretty quick turnaround to have that in here. The doors have been closed, I'd say, for the past 15 or so minutes. We haven't seen much as far as officer activity or deputy activity kind of walking around that area. So we've seen some cars on State Highway 25 on that backside there kind of come up and down some bigger vans. I don't know if they're investigative vans or we saw State Patrol deputies kind of in transport vans earlier. So I'm not entirely sure which one of those kind of categories it falls into. But that tow truck here has been here for the past, at this point, 5 or so minutes, kind of getting that dark colored vehicle loaded up onto that flatbed side and presumably taking it out of here.
And thank you, Ian, for that information. And just a little bit of context for how this usually works in a situation like this, where they get a search warrant for a vehicle. They often do open the doors just for a preliminary search, but then they tow it to a crime lab in a controlled environment to do like the DNA swabbing and the fingerprints and stuff like that. So that would be completely ordinary here. I'm wondering, were you able to see if they took anything from the vehicle, or did it appear that they just had opened the doors to check out for anything obvious there?
So we did at one point see a kind of a dark colored cloth laid over something. We're not able to tell exactly what that is, what was underneath that cloth. Just with the distance from where we are to where that is, I can't actually see it anymore. I presume that that's been picked up and kind of taken out of here or loaded up into another vehicle or what have you. But they had the doors open for a while and kind of had some of those something, I'll put it that way, kind of something there underneath a cloth or a tarp or some sort of covering there as they kind of kept that investigation going and looked into that vehicle there.
Well, thank you, Ian. That's good information to have that we can ask those questions at the 5:30 press conference back at the command center. Thanks, Ian.
Of course.
All right, we appreciate it as we watch that suspect vehicle get towed off of Highway 25 there in Sibley County near Green Isle. We want to go to Joe McCoy. He was one of the first people on the scene there this morning after that call came in around 6 or 7 that they believed they had located the suspect's vehicle. You've been talking to neighbors and people living there, and they've had a alert go out this morning saying stay in.
With that black Buick coming down Highway 25 here. So let's just kind of sit here as that Buick, or as that tow truck, excuse me, makes its way out of the perimeter, we maybe will be able to get a good shot of it if the car is actually on the tow truck. And yep, the car is indeed on the and watch. Quick early morning hour has been a central part of this investigation so far.
Signal is breaking up a little bit, Joe, so please talk us through what you're seeing with that car.
What'd you say, Lou?
I'm sorry, Joe, your signal was breaking up a little bit there, so I'm sure you guys will be able to send back that video in a bit, but just describe what you noticed on that vehicle. What did you see about that vehicle as it passed you?
Yep, so it had Minnesota license plates. I saw that. The driver's side window was not smashed. It was just rolled down a little bit, a little crack there. That was all we were able to see from the vantage point. It didn't look like any of the tires were busted or that the car was in any really poor condition. So really the two details I can give you, Lou, Minnesota license plate, as well as that driver's side window was just cracked a little bit as that tow truck towed it out of this scene.
All right, Joe, we appreciate all the latest information you provided. We'll be checking back later as the situation warrants. Again, active manhunt going on right now for 57-year-old Vance Boelter. He is considered armed and dangerous, and police have been going from home to home in Green Isle, a small town, about less than 600 people who live in that community. We know that Vance and his wife, Jenny, have 5 children, and they owned a home in that area. That is obviously a big point of interest for officers. And after finding that car there this morning at around 6 or 7 a.m., became the scene of a massive manhunt that continues as we speak. We, of course, will continue following this situation for you and bring you the latest updates. But we also, while the U.S. Open is in a rain delay, we are watching the U.S. Open. And once it goes back to active play, we will return you to that programming. But in the meantime, we do want to get a quick check on the weather with Jamie. He's in the backyard with some information on a KARE 11 weather impact alert day that's coming up tomorrow. Hi, Jamie.
Hi there. Yes. And today's
that might be able to help the investigation, but it's difficult because each of these farmsteads include a grove of knowing if this guy is lying in wait.
Exactly. And a lot of homes, we know they're going door to door and they are searching people's homes in Green Isle. And in these areas, you have a lot of sheds and a lot of outbuildings and barns and things that they're going to need to go through methodically to see if they can find him or any evidence that he'd been there. And you really feel for law enforcement because this isn't like searching for a missing person,
Right.
as you pointed out earlier. It's a very dangerous situation for them as they search
Yeah,
for
they
him.
have to be much more meticulous. You know, another question that came up is, so when his vehicle got left behind in Brooklyn Center, he did have firearms in that vehicle. We don't know what he still had on him and what he might have had access to after he left that scene. So he's obviously presumed to be armed and dangerous, but we just don't know exactly what the situation is that these law enforcement officials are walking into. So we don't know what kind of intel they have. We don't know some of the things that neighbors might have shared with them that they've seen that we haven't been told.
Exactly.
And so at this point, we can only hope that they have some additional intel that we don't know about yet and that they're closer to finding him than it appears just from the video we've been seeing.
And again, this press conference that they're about to hold here, it's about 4 minutes behind schedule right now. I don't know if we have a live picture of the podium. We are anticipating they'll share some information. Hopefully they'll have some updates. Of course, in an active investigation, there's a lot they cannot share with the public. But we're hoping that they'll be able to shine some light on questions that are swirling around this case, many of which you just posed, Louis. Do they believe that he is able to pull all of this off alone? Do they believe that he still has access to firearms? I'm assuming they have to go on the presumption that he does. And they're also, we understand, wanting to address the public because there are so many people that are on edge. This is clearly a dangerous man. Our Joe McCoy has been in the area all morning and has talked to neighbors who said they had a very restless night last night, as you can imagine, knowing that this man owns a home in Green Isle, which is only about 600 people, and knowing that he was still on the loose made for a very worrying night for a lot of the people who live there. At this point, they still haven't found
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bob Jacobson. I'm the Commissioner of Public Safety, and it's my honor to be with you again today on this continuing investigation. First of all, I want to thank our law enforcement partners who are continuing to investigate and search for our suspect in this case. We appreciate all the time that they're taking away, including today on Father's Day, as they're trying to, get to a successful conclusion. Also want to thank the public for listening to what we're putting out there for information, assisting us in any way that they can in locating our suspect. We appreciate that very much, and their help is always, of course, appreciated. Today we'll have some speakers to present some information and updates on what's going on with our investigation. So as we get through our speakers, after we're all done, there'll be an opportunity to ask some questions. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mayor Ryan Sabas. Mayor.
Thank you, and thank you all for coming. It's in moments like this that we search for answers to something that defies understanding. A senseless and tragic act that has shaken us all. But in our darkest hours, we're reminded of the strength and resilience of community. We come together not only to grieve, but to stand strong. And together, we will rise. The heinous act should never have happened. Speaker Emeritus Melissa Hortman and Senator John Hoffman are not just public servants. They are remarkable individuals who have devoted their lives to serving others. Every person deserves to feel safe in their home, including those that are elected to lead us. We have the full confidence in our justice system and the professionals working tirelessly to bring individuals responsible to justice. The Champlin Police Department, the Brooklyn Park Police Department, the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office, the Minnesota Department of Public Safety, and the FBI, all working closely in coordination on this ongoing and active investigation. We are anxiously awaiting news of justice, and we will not rest until that happens. If you have any information, please contact the tip line at bca.tips@state.mn.us or call 877-996-6222 or your local police department. Your voice could make the difference. Now more than ever, we must truly focus on what matters. Beneath all of our differences, political, personal, or otherwise, we are all human beings, and every human life has a value. Let us move forward with compassion, unity, and a fierce resolve for care for one another. While this tragedy has deeply impacted our cities, the people of Champlin, Brooklyn Park, and the greater Minnesota community are strong. We support those who are grieving, we honor those that we have lost, and we stand beside those that are still fighting. Champlin, Brooklyn Park, surrounding areas, stay strong, show love, show respect, be kind, and never forget the strength that we hold when we stand together. Thank you. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mayor Winston. Thank you.
Hi, so Mayor Winston of the city of Brooklyn Park. As I've said before, prayers and support go out to the families of the Hoffmans and the Hortmans. I know that our cities, Champlin, and Brooklyn Park are going through a fair amount of grief. But in reality, there's no distance between Brooklyn Park and Champlin Park in terms of supporting the families. Because of this, we know that Speaker Hortman, beyond her legislative impact, has had such an impact on unifying our communities and bringing them together. And even in a personal level, she's been dedicated to helping youth when nobody was looking. And when we look at Senator Hoffman earlier today, I was at a prayer vigil for him. And we were talking about how are we going to support the family and come together. And we realized that the number of families that we're going to have to reach out to and the communities we're going to have to reach out to bring everyone together, he's just had such an outsized impact. It's going to be a fair amount of work to properly support and honor him. Because of that, we're really supporting law enforcement in this, and we want to thank law enforcement for the pursuit of justice. So we talk about Governor Walz and Commissioner Jacobson and the resources they made available immediately to our resources at the federal level, the support that we're getting there, county, regional, local, and of course, Brooklyn Park. I think the work that was done there saved a number of lives. And again, they're committed to justice. And to assist them, we're asking, I think it was said earlier, we ask folks if they have information, please reach out to a tip line. And also, please, if you're looking for information, track real points of information, directly contact or look at information from law enforcement sources. Avoid not sharing or sharing misinformation. And then also, let's realize it's a time for calming words and influence. We are one community, so we very much need to come together on this and support one another. Again, there is some healing that needs to be done here, and we really want to support the families. Again, prayers go out to the families of the Hortmans and the Hoffmans. So thank you, everybody, for your support, and thank you for support not just for within Brooklyn Park or Champlin, but also thank you for support from across the country and through greater Minnesota.
Thank you, Mayor and mayors and commissioner, and for everybody. I am Drew Evans, the superintendent of the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. I want to provide you a little bit of an update on what we've been working on today and where we are continuing to go. Law enforcement continues to work in partnership to locate and take into custody Vance Boelter in relation to these murders and attempted murders. There's a nationwide warrant for his arrest for the murders and attempted murders in this case at the state level, and there's also then a federal warrant for the same crime, or for him as well, for unlawful flight to avoid prosecution. That's through the coordination that's been done with the Hennepin County Attorney's Office and the United States Attorney's Office for that. And so he is wanted on those across the United States. He is not in custody at this time. This remains a very active investigation. We continue to conduct interviews on the investigative piece, not only to learn his whereabouts, but also to follow up on the case and gather the information as part of these the prosecution related to him. As you may have noted today, and I know you've been around and the sheriff provided some updates, there is information that led us to do the searches that continue in Sibley County in that area. Those teams will continue to be active until they feel that they have done a thorough and complete search in that area for him. I want to reiterate for everybody, if you know anything about his whereabouts, or if you spot anything suspicious or may have been suspicious in the last 24 hours, anywhere, but certainly down in that area, to please contact law enforcement, either your local law enforcement and through our tip line. I also want to remind everybody that there's a $50,000 reward offered by the FBI in this particular case. That reward is leading to the capture of him related to this, and that is offered by the FBI. The teams that continue to work on this is over 100 law enforcement officers and numerous SWAT teams that are in that area searching for him. The BCA is working in partnership on this investigation with the Brooklyn Park Police Department, Hennepin County Sheriff's Office, FBI, ATF, United States Marshal Service, Sibley County Sheriff's Office, and then numerous other agencies such as the State Patrol and other sheriff's offices from across the state of Minnesota and local law enforcement. This is of the utmost priority, and that is why you're seeing teams from the Twin Cities down in Sibley trying to apprehend him as quickly as possible. We did locate in that area that led us a vehicle that we had interest in related to him yesterday that we were searching for, and it was located in Sibley County very early today. Also, I know it's been reported a hat that we believe he was wearing was found in proximity to that vehicle, which is what has led us to believing he was in that area. As we go forward on this, as we see, what we would ask the public to do is continue to remain vigilant, and anything that you see as suspicious, to please report this to us. You know, for him, it is important now at this point that he's wanted for these to come into custody. We want that to be done safely, both for him and for the public, so that we can move forward with this process, and also for the entire state of Minnesota. As I noted, our law enforcement continue to work very diligently and hard, and we know everybody wants answers. And what I'd ask for everybody today, I know it's been a long day without updates, but that's because it's been a very fluid day. There's been a number of different things that have been followed up on throughout the day and will continue to. As noted, we have taken in over 400 tips into our tip line already, and I would encourage people to continue to provide those so that our investigators can sift through those for clues and information that will lead us to him and to uncover exactly what's happening. Lastly, I would just remind everybody and that, we have families that continue to grieve, that are going through this process, and that it's very difficult for them. We've been in contact with families related to this, trying to provide some answers. And while everybody wants an easy answer, I would encourage everybody online and in our communities to not speculate on what occurred and what the motivation was for this. We often want easy answers for complex problems. And this is a complex situation that our investigators are going to need time to sift through the information and evidence, and those answers will come as we complete the full picture of our investigation, and we will continue to provide that information as we are able. With that, I'd be happy to answer some questions at this time, and I just remind everybody that it's a very active investigation.
Did you find anything in that car? Our reporters noticed that there was something being grabbed underneath the blanket. Can you share any information?
So the question was, did we find anything in that car? We did find items of evidence in that car that are relevant to this investigation. We can't go into the details of that, but there were items recovered for that car that are relevant, that will be part of our investigation, that provide additional answers and that lead us to believe, additionally, beyond looking for it, that he was associated with that vehicle.
Adrian Broadus from NBC News Network. Do you believe the suspect is trying to leave the country? And if so, do you have any evidence being headed towards Canada?
So the question is, do we believe that he is trying to leave the country or headed towards Canada? There's a large law enforcement presence down in Sibley County, but we don't have him in custody. So we don't have evidence that he's intending a particular destination, but all options are open to the investigative team, and they're exploring that right now.
Dan from the New York Times, do you believe he's on foot?
The question is, do we believe he's on foot? We believe in terms of we have not concluded exactly how he is getting around the area at this time. It could be in multiple ways that he has traveled, and that's open. And that's why you see in that area a very large perimeter, because they're looking at various modes of transportation from there.
Hey, it's Brittany Shepard, ABC News. Do you believe the suspect is still alive? Can you tell us more about the traffic stop involved with what happened?
Yeah, the question is, do we believe he's still alive? We're certainly operating as though he's still alive and believe he is at this time, and will continue on as is. And the question about his wife and traffic stop, I think everybody would know that, in any time an individual is identified as a suspect in investigation, we're going to talk to their family members and do that. So we met with his family, not just his wife, but other family members, to really understand what's going on. And that's part of that. And that will help us complete the investigation. And so that was part of what we're doing. Jay?
Jay Coles, Channel 5 News. Drew, on that point, are they in custody at all, or were they just questioned and released? And also, do you have any evidence that he might have stopped at another lawmaker's house before he got to Hoffman?
So the questions were, are they in custody? The answer is no. And then as far as the others, we've mentioned we can't get into the specifics of the investigation. What we believe that there certainly were other individuals that were identified as part of this information with him. And the terms of what exactly he had done, we are still continuing to build out that full picture as to what his whereabouts were. But we certainly are getting there. And there were other individuals that, might have been contacted or targeted. Yep. Paul.
One of my colleagues spoke with people in Sibley County who were told that the suspect may have been getting around on a bicycle or an e-bike. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah. So the question was, is the individual getting around on a bike or bicycle? I think that, as noted previously, there might be multiple modes of transportation for the individual, and we can't get into the details and specifics. It might thwart our ability to locate the individual.
Yeah, Drew Paul, Fox 9, just about assistance. Do we believe at this point he's getting any assistance? Any evidence that was found? And then just to elaborate a little bit more on that traffic stop, because if there have been leaks that the cash is in the wife's car, passports, weaponry, it sounds, intriguing. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what was found there and why, if so, they were able to be released?
Yeah, the question was, why were they about the traffic stop and what were then, can you repeat the first part of your question? Oh, yeah, thank you. So the question was, is there assistance in the items? And I can't discuss the details of what was inside of the vehicle at that time. It's part of our active criminal investigation, and we're working on that. Why were they allowed to be released? They were cooperative. We're working through that process. We certainly always analyze evidence, but they were very cooperative with us and provided us the information we needed and the information related to that. If the question about do we believe he's receiving any assistance, all options are on the table. We haven't seen specific individuals doing that, but we don't know that specifically now. He's certainly been in contact with individuals. Whether or not they're providing active assistance, I can't provide that. Go ahead. Yeah. Thank you for the question. It was about details on what's been referred to as manifesto, and then are there online information or others or threats indicating. So far, we have not located any prior threats with this individual towards anybody on that. That will obviously be a deeper dive to really understand the motivation of this individual and whether or not that is on there and connections related to threats, whether they might be here or in different parts of the United States. In terms of what's been referred to manifesto, I want to clarify for everybody, and just for this is not a document, because I think it's important for the public to understand, that would be like a traditional manifesto that's a treatise on all kinds of ideology and writings. This is a notebook with a lot of that's been reported of lawmakers and others that are listed in here, and then much more other thoughts that are throughout this, as opposed to a very succinct document that's providing long, and it's mixed in with other documents. So that's where this is coming from. I don't want the public to have the impression that there's this long manifesto that's providing all of this information and details and then associated with names. It's much more about names and then others, and we will work through. And beyond that, I cannot provide details because it's part of the active criminal investigation. I am not familiar with that. I'd have to ask you to go to Egan. The question was a shelter in place in Egan, and I am not tracking a shelter in place in Egan right now. Was it earlier today or is it right now? I would ask that we've been in here for a few minutes, but so I don't know if there's anything related to ours, but I'd have to ask you to talk to the Egan Police Department. Yeah, I can just on that. So the federal on, yes, please. Yeah.
Is there still an ongoing threat to current lawmakers?
So what I would tell you in terms of the questions were ongoing threat to public lawmakers, is there one? Certainly the safety of our lawmakers and public services is utmost concern to all of us. Certainly is to the security apparatus at the Capitol that provide that for them, our Minnesota State Patrol as well. And so we continue to evaluate that. I will say that we have no indication that the individual that is wanted here did anything other than conduct these acts by himself. But that doesn't mean we aren't exploring more fully. If there's any other threats that might be there, we will continue to evaluate that and work together with them. In terms of the role of the federal government, they've been extremely great partners to all of us. The FBI and ATF, the United States Marshal Service, and others from the federal government are providing both investigative assistance on this case and then participating in the manhunt for the individual to locate him and take him into custody safely. That is not uncommon in a large case like this, and the United States Attorney's Office has been in contact with us, and they certainly will be exploring if there are federal charges that would be connected to this sort of violence that was conducted on our lawmakers. Yeah, so this is a partnership right now. The Brooklyn Park Police Department is lead on the murders that occurred in their city, and we are assisting them as we do as a BCA and communities all across Minnesota with the assistance of the Sheriff's Office as well, and then those federal agencies. When we do an investigation like this, it is not uncommon for us to work in partnership with our federal agencies to see if there is an investigation that may lead to federal charges, which is what we're doing. So it is very typical that you would pursue
in a murder case, the murder investigation as a state case be charged, and then we'll examine if there are federal charges, and we'll have those ongoing conversations, which we are doing right now with the United States Attorney's Office for Minnesota. And in that case, the FBI is typically the lead agency in that case, unless there is something else that's more specialized, like gun charges, etc. All right, thank you. We should answer this. So, and this is, the question is, this has been expanded to South Dakota. And I think that came from, I don't know the specifics, but oftentimes when we're looking for an individual, we will send out information to law enforcement in surrounding states. Yesterday, he certainly had a lot of time to be able to cover a lot of distance once we knew that he had escaped from the crime scene. We believe that information was shared just like we would share in Minnesota if somebody was coming. This happens on a regular basis, that it was shared out for their law enforcement to be on the lookout. They call it a BOLO, to be on the lookout for the individual. And we believe it was there. We were never tracking and believing the individual went to South Dakota as an investigative team. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Happy Father's Day to all the dads.
Thank you, everyone.